Then yes, I know.
I know. Welcome to our
Reading Chaucer.
Are you serious? Of course you are. You're not ready, aren't you? You can also do that. Makes you on a council.
You do? Okay. Bahar? Yeah. What have you do? Okay. Thank you. Hello, welcome. We are going to reconvene this regular Board of Education meeting for Washington Unified School District, February 27th, 2025. As we get started, I'm going to read our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge the land currently occupied by the Washington Unified School District as the traditional home of the Patwin people. These sovereign people have been caretakers of the area since time immemorial. Despite centuries of genocide and occupation, the Patwin people continue as vibrant and resilient federally recognized and unrecognized tribes, bands, and rancherias. Today, we honor and recognize our Patwin tribal neighbors for their contributions as the caretakers of the Sacramento Valley and honor their sustained existence. With their blessing and continued guidance, Washington Unified School District seeks to provide an accessible, equitable, and supportive institution of learning and experience. And that will take us now to our Pledge of Allegiance. And Bahar Yakbi, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge. Thank you. And we have our roll call. Vice President Coffey,
Present.
Clerk Castro,
Present.
Trustee Wong,
Here.
Trustee Hunt,
Here.
and I too am present. We have our announcement of actions taken in closed session. Government Code Section 54957, Public Employee Discipline Dismissal Release. Government Code Section 54957B1, Board Action Regarding Public Employees Discipline Dismissal Release. Direction was given. 2, Government Code 44591, Adoption Resolution Number 2425-37, to release and/or reassign probationary teachers, non-reelection. This was not addressed this evening. Items 3 and 4, we will be going back into closed session to be discussing. And item 5, Government Code 54956.8, property of 425 Todd Hunter Avenue, negotiating parties Washington Unified School District and the City of West Sacramento Parks and Recreation under negotiations. Instructions to negotiators regarding the sale options, Wright Park. Direction was given. Do we have any changes to the agenda this evening? Okay, then can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Move.
Okay, moved by Vice President Coffey, seconded by Trustee Hunt. All in favor?
Aye.
And I too vote aye. Thank you. And that takes us now to our association reports. And we have our student board member who's going to start us off with it, Mariana Gutierrez from River City High School.
Good
Welcome.
evening, everyone.
A minute.
Starting off with Bridgeway Island. Congratulations, Bees. Both girls and boys won district champs for middle school basketball. Riverbanks kindergarteners planted trees and will be continuing this Saturday from 12 to 3 p.m. Elkhorn held a PBIS dance for all students and had their second esports tournament of the year. They also sent their middle school students to attend the Student Voice Conference. On February 20th, Southport held a parent university night where parents learned about many valuable topics. Their current plan for Read Across America consists of West Sac PD officers reading to students and the River Cats mascot Dinger handing out books. Stonegate thanks PTO and Miss Holly, their librarian, for helping purchase comfortable seating to encourage reading in the library, just in time for Read Across America. Westmore Oaks hosted a community tree planting event on Saturday, February 15th, and was the only Washington Unified School District school to host a presentation of the Black History quilts, created by master quilter Christelle Johnson. Westfield gives thanks to the West Sac Rotary Club for hosting a dance for their middle schoolers, and they sent 6 of their middle school students to attend the Student Voice Conference. Washington Unified School Virtual Academy. On February 21st, they had students come in person for an assembly ran by Sammy Circuit. In January, their students took their second iReady diagnostic which showed incredible growth. ESL students in the adult ed program will be learning about opportunities available at Sac City, including careers and support services. YOLO has been hosting engaging assemblies that celebrate students' achievements and acknowledge their voices. River City, we want to give a shout out to Miss Johnson's SDC class at RCHS. They have been engaging in various projects and activities on campus. That is it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And as always, you're welcome to stay and give input throughout the meeting. And our CSEA report, President Gandara has let us know that he will not be here this evening, but he has emailed us with his comments. And so that now takes us to our WSTA report, and that is with President Knepp. Welcome.
Good evening, President Kirby Gonzalez, Vice President Coffey, Board and Trustees, Superintendent Hildreth, Cabinet. I wanted to start out tonight by once again just celebrating the professionalism and conduct that seems to be present from both parties in our negotiations. I was just talking to Assistant Superintendent Borges today about the fact that although we don't know what the future of interest-based bargaining looks like between certificated and the district in the future, one thing that is certainly evident from the interactions so far this year up to date is that the training we've received is enhancing whatever process we're using. Whether we're doing an article interest-based or whether we're doing an article in the traditional format, it is greasing the wheels towards understanding mutual intent. And I think it's making the bargaining process more positive. Now, we've got a long ways to go. And I'm a union president, so I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that we can get there this way throughout the entire process, but I just wanted to celebrate it and thank both teams for that dedication in the room. There's only one item on the agenda tonight that I wanted to talk about, and that is the approval item for the out-of-state conference in Seattle. It seems like every month I'm coming to the board and saying, you know, as we're talking about fiscal responsibility, as budgets are tight, and we keep seeing these out-of-state conferences, are we looking to see if we can find it in state? I think because this keeps coming up, and again, this one's $16,500 for 3 days and 6 people. And we're looking at budgets. I think instead of talking about making sure we're being fiscally responsible and looking in the state, I think we need to make a commitment until we're out of the weeds with these budget study sessions that we're all talking about to not send people on such expensive conferences out of state. Maybe find a way to do it in-house to bring people in or find something within the state. I just think, I think we're all being asked to look where we can save money, and I think this is one of those places where we can probably do it. And I know a lot of my members would love to go to an out-of-state conference too, but this might not be the time to do it. So I'm gonna start urging the board to consider not approving out-of-state conferences and think about that. Lastly, tonight, I wanna talk about probably, and this is why I'm only talking about three things, one of the most important things I've ever spoken to the board about, and that is about losing one of the most highly qualified, dedicated professionals that I've ever seen in a classroom. And I'm talking about Mr. James Colligan, who's going to speak to you tonight. This is an individual that if you ask most students that have gone to River City and through our system will tell you is the best. If there were baseball cards, it would be a collector's item. Baseball cards for teachers. This teacher inspires, doesn't talk down, motivates, finds out what that little interest that each student has, and finds a way to power that interest. When people think about WUSD, they think about people like James Colligan. That's what they do. Teachers know it. Nobody has to say how amazing he is. When you say this name, people know who you're talking about and know it's one of our best. It's known community-wide. One of my close family friends is one of our valedictorians and a graduate from UC Berkeley in data science. Took the degree in Berkeley and got into Berkeley because, and this is a quote from her, of James Colligan. We talk about retaining. We talk about our students deserving the best. We talk about a place for excellence. We can't afford to lose these teachers. And so I'm asking you tonight, because we have this really unique opportunity. And Mr. Colligan didn't know I was going to do this, but we have an opportunity to listen to the why. And if we really care, and if we put our hearts behind what we say in this district, that we want the best for our students, we better be listening, because we cannot afford this kind of loss in our district. We cannot afford it. I looked at the LCFF numbers last board meeting. This is the kind of teacher that turns those things around. This is the solution, not some fancy program, not some curriculum, not some out-of-state conference. The solution is right before us. We've had it all along. And we need to listen so this does not happen again. Our students deserve the best, and that's just what we're losing.
Thank you, President Knapp. Okay, that is going to take us into our general public comments, and I do have a disclaimer to read this evening. How many public comments do we have?
6.
Okay, so you'll have 3 minutes each to speak, and so think about that as we get ready to call you up, but here's our disclaimer. At our regular board meeting held on February 9th, 2023, the board resolved that written public comments received by 3 p.m. on the day of the meeting will be provided to the board, but not read into the record during the meeting. We did not have any emailed comments today through the system, but we did have one that we received over email. Members of the public may address the board on topics of the board agenda during every meeting. In addition, during regular meetings, the public may also address any topic within the jurisdiction of the board. Please know the board is listening to your comments, but by law, we cannot meaningfully respond in this forum to items not on the agenda. The board may limit the total time for public input on any topic to 20 minutes unless it waives the item limit for the item. Individual speakers may be limited to 3 minutes to comment on any topic. The board respects the right of members of the public to speak regarding matters within its jurisdiction. However, please recognize that comments regarding students other than the speaker's own child made during a public board meeting may be a violation of the student's right to privacy, and thus the speaker may be legally liable. If you reference a student's name other than your own student, you may be deemed out of order. Furthermore, it's important for the public to understand that negative or derogatory comments made against district employees or others, even those made in a public board meeting, may be actionable civil defamation. Although the board may not prohibit such comments, board policy allows the public to lodge complaints against district employees, providing more opportunity to be heard than is allowed under the open meeting law that governs this meeting. Okay, and with that, we're going to welcome you for your public comments. Can we have our first speaker?
Yes, absolutely. Our first public comment for this evening is James Colligan.
Starting the time I hadn't started. I've dedicated most of my adult life to being a teacher at River City High School. In my 14 years at RCHS, I started AP Statistics and Regular Statistics Senior Seminar I helped create building foundations for success and academic outreach. I've been the Math 1 lead and the AP team lead. I was on the safety team for 3 years. I've done the data analysis for our last 3 WASC reports. Spent more than 100 hours on the Joint Emergency Task Force during COVID. I mentored student teachers, UC Davis interns, foster students, and 5 different clubs during my lunch. This district isn't just where I work. My wife and I have been in West Sac since 2012. We've raised 3 children here. My older 2, 9 and 7, love it at Westmore. This district gave me stability, a career, and a community. For that, I am grateful. But tonight, I stand before you to say that I'm done. It will be my last board meeting. I'm leaving. Not because I no longer love teaching, I do, but because my school is not the same place it used to be. The conditions at RCHS are not sustainable. Teachers are barely holding things together, students are suffering, and support is almost non-existent. And I think that you need to see this for yourselves. I invite each of you to come to River City High School, not for a scheduled tour, not for a photo op. I want you to show up unannounced. Count how many students are out of class. Breathe in the vape smoke. It's not just in the bathrooms anymore, it's in the hallways, in the classrooms. Watch the chaos when the bell rings and 2,209 children scramble to find a bathroom that isn't locked. Walk into a few classrooms and see how many kids are on their phones instead of learning. Ask students and teachers how many fire alarms they've endured the last 2 months, how many fireworks, how many swastikas. Listen to the torrent of profanity, the racial slurs, the homophobic, sexist filth echoing down the hallway. And please don't write this off as normal teenage conduct. I've taught 2,293 students. Yes, I counted. I know what is typical for RCHS. This is not normal, and our students deserve better. My family and I may be leaving, but students will still be here. And let me tell you, there are amazing students at River City. I've had the privilege of teaching many of them. They are still showing up every day, trying to learn and succeed despite everything that is wrong about their school. They deserve a safe, supportive environment, and they need you to act. I believe that you do want to improve this district. If I'm right, then don't just sit behind your desk reading reports. Come to River City and witness it firsthand. And when you do, ask yourself, is this the kind of school that you would want your own children to attend? Because I wouldn't send mine there. Not a chance. I want to end with gratitude. To my many students, past and present, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. You are everything that made this job good. I hope you find a career you love as much as I've loved this one. And to this board, I urge you to take action. Our community deserves a better school. Fix it, please, before more teachers make the same decision that I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colligan. Our next speaker.
Our next speaker is Maria Garcia. Ms. Garcia will give her remarks in Spanish, and Stacy Tran will translate immediately after.
Thank you. Welcome.
Buenas tardes a todos. Estoy otra vez aquí, apoyando al maestro y a todos los maestros que están con necesidad de ayuda dentro del distrito. Tenemos 2,209 estudiantes dentro de la high school. Muy poco personal. Trabajé dentro del distrito y se me hace tan injusto que no puedan tener ayuda para los maestros. Dentro de la escuela tenemos 66.9% de niños socioeconómicamente en desventaja. Las escuelas Westfield, West Morox, tenemos en rojo. English Learner Progress, red. English Language Arts, red. Matemáticas, red. Los maestros necesitan apoyo con los alumnos, con todo lo que pasa dentro, marihuana, vapings y todo lo que está pasando dentro de las escuelas. Por muchos años se los he dicho yo, necesitan ayuda. La política, demasiada política dentro de las escuelas. Ya basta. Es justo de que miren por la educación de nuestros hijos, no por la política. Gracias.
So these are the words of Miss Maria Garcia. Good evening. She's here to support this teacher and all teachers in our district. River City High School has 2,209 students. There's not sufficient staff, and there's not sufficient support for our teachers. 66.9% of the students, according to the California Data Dashboard in our district, are economically disadvantaged. Westfield and Westmore Oaks have a great deal of red on the dashboard. Our EL progress, English learner progress is red. English language arts is red. Math is red. Teachers need help with their students and with support for behaviors such as drugs and vaping. For many years, she's been coming to these meetings and telling us that the teachers really do need your help. There's too much politics in schools. Please stop with all the politics and really help our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. Our next public comment.
Our next speaker is Jen Stone Eisberg.
Good evening, board. Usually if a Stone or an Iceberg shows up here, you guys are either congratulating us on something or we're here to raise an issue. So unfortunately tonight it is the latter, and we've been here before. We've been really loud as a family. We've been really loud as a community about stuff, and we've asked for your support, and it took us a long time to get there last time about things that we ended up not really being very wrong about. Kids that were disadvantaged during COVID were exactly who we said they would be, but we got called names because of it. However, now we've sat back and we've enjoyed our experience. Honestly, our kids have thrived at River City High School. We have 4 kids there right now, and we just graduated one last year. And we need action now, though. They need to be able to go to the bathroom, you guys. Like, these are basic needs. I understand that we're looking for diversity and excellence, things I want too, but basic needs have to be met before we can address those issues. They have to be able to sit in a classroom that doesn't smell like weed. They have to be able to go to school and not see stuff littered all over the ground that is profane. There has to be intervention, and there has to be consequences for the children that are committing these things. We're not doing them any favors by not addressing the root cause of the issue. I appreciate the fact that we have amazing teachers like Mr. Colligan. And frankly, when my kids came home and said he was leaving, they were devastated. They were really upset because he is who is making a difference in their lives at this school. We can't lose people like him. I completely agree with their sentiment. So I just want to share one final thing. I am a national vice president in a Fortune 100 company. I hire people a lot of time. That is what I do. I hire a lot of people. I'm not going to hire these people that have done all this amazing stuff around diversity and have received none of the excellence. They aren't going to get the jobs. They aren't going to thrive in the real world. They're going to walk off that campus, and that will be it for them. That is not what you want. Kids need structure, and kids need consequence to know where their boundaries are. They're given none at River City, and it needs to change. The bathroom situation has to be solved immediately, you guys. These are not hard things. Things like water stations when it's 110 out, and bathrooms, these are basic needs. They need to be met, and the school board needs to take some action. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Elijah Stone.
Good evening.
Don't go crazy,
right.
though. Nobody else.
All right. Good evening, members of the board and community members. My name is Elijah Stone, and I'm a freshman here at River City High School. And I'm here tonight because I'm frustrated. Our school preaches equity and excellence, except there's nothing equitable about the basic safety and discipline issues that students deal with every single day. Let's start with something as simple as bathroom access. Bathrooms are a necessity, but in my school, they're constantly closed, either because students are smoking inside, either because students quite literally block entry and threaten anyone who tries to use them. How is that equity? How is that excellence? Students shouldn't feel unsafe or be forced to hold it for an entire school day because their school can't enforce their own school rules. And when it comes to discipline, The inconsistencies are just as bad. I see students facing harsher consequences for being on their phones in class than others do for vaping or even using illegal substances on campus. This isn't unfair, it's dangerous, and it sends the message that the minor rule violations are taken more seriously than actions that could put students in danger or jail. Now, I want to acknowledge that hiring campus security was a step in the right direction. Now, what's the point if they're not doing their job properly? Bathroom remains hotspots for illegal activity because security either doesn't cover them effectively or is too lenient when they do. At last fall's homecoming, I, the #1 ranked freshman academically here at River City, was nearly kicked out, not for breaking any rules myself, for just being around students who were goofing off. Yet that very night, people who broke school policy and state laws by abusing substances face little to no consequences. The lack of effective security has even led students to setting off fireworks in the bathroom. Think about that. Explosives inside the school building, and security didn't stop it in time. If students can get away with that, how else can anyone feel safe on campus? I, along with many of my peers, feel unsafe at school. And what's worse is that we don't see any real accountability. Most of these students aren't just avoiding punishment, they're avoiding being prosecuted for illegal substances underage. Why is that? Why does the school tolerate an environment where those of us who actually follow the rules have to suffer because of those who don't? I urge you to take real action. Enforce discipline constantly. Make security actually do its job. Hold students accountable for serious infractions, not just minor rule breaking. Because right now, the message you're sending is that bad behavior goes unpunished while good students are left to deal with the consequences. That is not equity, and that is not excellence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stone.
Our next speaker this evening is Bahara Yakubi.
And you can raise, we'll wait on your time, but if you'd like to lower the podium.
Good evening, esteemed members of the school board. My name is Bahar Yakubi, and I'm a senior at River City High School. I am also a part of the research project at UC Davis called College Going Initiative for English Language Learners. In this project, our project was focused on the question, what are the most important barriers stopping English language learners from attending college? And one of the barriers that was discovered was financial aid. And so my fellow researchers and I have conducted extensive research with the goal of increasing the college going rate among English language learners within Yolo County. We have developed detailed recommendations based on our findings, and my fellows and I would be honored to share them with you and the rest of the board. 2 weeks ago, we had the opportunity to meet with Trustee Wong, and we are hoping to present our findings to the school board. I'm here to respectfully request that we be added to the agenda for the next school board meeting to share our research and discuss the potential steps towards improving college access for English language learners in our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we discuss future agenda items at the end of our meeting, so your request is noted. Thank you. Okay,
Our last public speaker this evening is Joshua Stone.
All right. Good evening, school board. When I was deciding on River City High School, I was between Christian Brothers and going here. And I really wanted to support the local public school, and so I decided to come here. And throughout my last years, I have pushed myself academically to try to be the top of my class. I've taken as many APs as I can. But I've also seen River City completely go on a downslope the last 4 years. And I know that this has not just been the last 4 years, but a long time since then, it's been going down. I've seen vaping increase. I've seen amount of fights could just continue. And it just seems to go completely unenforced. And it's things like these that make me question wanting to go to River City in the first place. I go to school and I see that no bathrooms are open, and I go to find one, and maybe I do find one that's open, and then there's 10 kids smoking in there. how am I supposed to go to the bathroom or feel comfortable going to the bathroom with that many kids like that? Like, it doesn't make sense for students like me. And I think like a lot of kids in this room, we all are trying to push ourselves, and we're trying to make the best that we can out of River City High School. But it just doesn't feel like students like us are even remotely empowered or like really feel supported in any way. And I think that if River City doesn't fix this issue, then students like me who want to actually push further and want to go to college and want to make River City look good as a school, you're going to lose kids like us who actually like want to do something. And instead, you're going to be left with a bunch of kids who don't want to do something. And I honestly do really question whether I should have gone to Christian Brothers. And I don't think that should be the case. I want to support the public schools, and I think that you guys need to step up on issues like this if you want to keep excellent kids on campus. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
That was the last one.
Okay, thank you. While the board cannot weigh in on the comments that were said tonight, it's not agendized. I do want to say that we are all listening, and I know that it is hard to come up and to speak and to give up your evenings to be here. And so for all of those of you who spoke, thank you. And those of you who are here, your presence is noted as well. And so thank you for being here and showing your voices, whether they were out loud at the podium or by your presence. And clearly there's work that we will be doing and need to do, because everyone deserves to have a safe school with their basic needs met is a non-negotiable, with all of the other pieces, of course, that we need to provide. So thank you for being here. Okay. And that moves us into our public hearing, and we do not have a public hearing this evening, and so that's going to take us into our first information and discussion item. Our presentation of the SchoolWorks, Inc. 2024-2025 demographic and enrollment projections, and that is with Monique Stovall, our Chief Business Officer. And we'll wait just a minute until the room.
We definitely push this. Definitely push this.
Okay. All right. Okay. You ready? I know. All right, welcome. Our much anticipated demographics and enrollment projections. Monique Stovall, our Chief Business Officer.
Okay. Thank you and good evening. This evening I'm joined by our consultant from SchoolWorks, Ken Reynolds, to share with you a demographic study that was completed by his company over the past few months. It's important to know that when we're talking about a demographic study, we're also talking about enrollment projections and how things might change in the future and be able to affect our district.
Well, good evening. It's an honor to be here to share our results with you. And we have done a lot of work with your district in the past. You may be familiar, we do the regular developer fee studies. And so we're very familiar with the district. I think that it's been almost 10 years since the last time we did a demographic study for you, though. So a lot of new information we'll go through real quickly. And press the wrong one. Here we go. So this slide really highlights all the type of data that we analyze to give you the results. It's quite a challenge to look at all the information that's really needed to come up with some accurate information for you. And so I'll go through and talk about these different components as we go through this presentation and talk about the ones that we have better reliability on and those things that are subject to change. So we do all of our analysis in a computerized mapping system. So this here shows a map of your school district boundaries, and all those red dots represents where students live during this school year that we're currently in. All the data we look at is from October of each school year. So wherever we're talking numbers, it's from that October time point in the year. So to do our analysis, we actually look at each of the individual school areas. So this here just shows a map of your schools, and each color represents one of the different campuses. So one of the significant items we look at, looks like we're having a few challenges with the projection here, is looking at the number of births that occur. And so the blue line here on the actual presentation, it's labeled with the numbers, but we can still see the trend, right? The number of births in the community that is provided to us from the Department of Health, and it's based on where the child's mother lives based on their zip code. So again, it's based on zip code, so we don't always have a perfect correlation between zip code areas and school district boundaries, but that's what the source of the data. But you can see that blue line is dropping over time. And we're seeing that across our state. The number of children being born each year has been declining. So we're also seeing that in your community. And whereas those blue bars represent our TK enrollment, that's our 4-year-olds. And we see those numbers have been growing over time because that program has been expanding the last several years to expand to all 4-year-olds. This fall, the fall of 2025, is when all 4-year-olds are then eligible to start attending that TK class. So those yellow bars represent our projections for the TK students over the next 3 years. And again, very similarly, this shows the kindergarten students, right? Those are our 5-year-olds. And again, we've seen that the numbers in kindergarten have been dropping the last several years as the birth rates have been dropping. But our capture ratio, right, the blue line and those blue bars are pretty parallel, so that we've got a good correlation there. So, but we do see the incoming kindergarten numbers are going to be a little bit lower than our historic numbers. And the little bit of red you see there on those bars in the next 4 years, that is which portion of those incoming kindergarten students are coming out of your new development activity.
Can I ask you a question on that? Do you have listed what new developments you're using, or will that be in the presentation at some point?
It's in our full report. Let me see
okay. I
if
apologize.
I think we do have a page on the developments. Yes,
okay.
We do.
I didn't mean to throw you. We can keep going and then I'll think.
So this next slide is not showing up very well. I don't know if you have your reports in front of you, but
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So basically what we try to illustrate here is in the green bars, which are missing from our chart up here, it shows the enrollment by grade. Now those numbers are very similar to this blue line, which is actually represents how many students were in that class when they started school. And so there's two takeaways from this information. One is that we see basically for grades from about grades 6 through 12, our population is pretty stable. And so we have a good, solid, flat enrollment there. When we look at the grades younger than 6th grade, right, they have dropped off, they've got smaller. And so our incoming classes, are projected to come in maybe about 450 students, but again, that 6th through grade 12 is about 600 students each. And so again, quite a bit smaller. So if we're graduating 600 seniors and we're only bringing in about 400 to 450 kindergarten students, that creates a drop in enrollment. However, a lot of times that can be offset by all the other analysis that we do in our study, like the new development impact and things like that. And then, of course, on the following page, we do talk about the cohorts. And so what the cohorts basically do, let me see if we have that.
Sorry, just one
That's
moment. The slides were not working correctly.
So on the cohorts page, again, a lot of numbers there. It's probably a lot harder to understand the data when we just show a table of numbers as compared to a picture. But those cohort numbers are positive numbers. And so what a positive cohort represents is, right, when we compare any class and any grade, right, like, for example, our third graders this year, when we go to look at how many fourth graders we anticipate next year, that number is going to be a little bit more than we had this year. And so a positive cohort, that's what it's representing, is the classes grow from grade to grade from year to year. Now, our biggest positive cohort, of course, is in ninth grade. And so what that means is we're having kids show up in ninth grade that weren't there in eighth grade. And that's very common throughout our state. Typically, if we have some competition with private schools or charter schools, and then they come to your school for high school, we also see that trend sometimes when it comes from an elementary private school into a public school for middle school. But so of all the cohorts, the largest one was our ninth grade. But on average, we do have a positive average. So that's telling us as a whole, we're retaining our students and growing slowly over time. But again, it doesn't mean we create, just because we have a positive cohort does not mean we're going to see an increase in our total enrollment. And so this next page is where we really get into the development details. And as I had sort of highlighted earlier, mentioned earlier, this is where there's more uncertainty. And so, we have some great information here, right? We have identified over 9,000 potential new housing units to be built within your school district. That's a significant number. However, of all those units that are being planned and going through the planning process, we are projecting only about 1,400 of them get built over the next 6 years. So that's just over 200 a year. And the reason is, right, you look at our current housing market, we've got challenges. Homes are very expensive. Interest rates are running high. And so, again, that's where there's some perhaps uncertainty as to, right, will something change in the near future where all of a sudden the housing market is stimulated and we see even more development than what we're projecting. So things could happen faster than we were anticipating, but it could slow down too. If all of a sudden it's more expensive for our basic building materials, then prices are going to go up. If interest rates go up instead of down, then it's going to create the exact opposite situation. So again, a lot of moving parts there. That's why it's good to track this and perhaps do an update every couple of years. So it's, again, that's one of we do our best to do a projection. We're very accurate with our projections. We're typically within a 1% error rate. But this long-term, what's going to happen with the housing market is where there's more uncertainty. Short term, things don't change much in the very short term, although things seem to be fluctuating every day and over, at least in Washington, D.C. right now. So again, something to keep a close eye on. The bottom part of this chart just shows how many students we anticipate from each unit. Of course, when we have some of the historic type of construction where we've got the single-family homes that were being built in the southern area of your district, right, we would expect these types of yield rates, perhaps even more. But when we got some of the higher density stuff that was going around the ball fields and things like that, those we can typically see a lower yield rate. So again, just because we have an average yield rate, sometimes we have to get into a little closer look at exactly the types of things that are going to be being built over the next several years. So then, using all of this data, this shows the end result. And again, the numbers are missing from this slide, but at least we can see the colors. The orange is representing our elementary grades, the green our middle school grades, and the blue is our high school grades. We're showing 10 years of history and 6 years into the future. And I realize you have the K-8 schools. Again, we just color code it this way typically because there's different fundings at different grade levels that you receive. And so we can see, again, overall, we see it relatively stable. When we look at the historic data, right, we were growing up for those first 3 years on this chart. Then we saw a little bit of decline. But the last several years have been very stable. We have seen just a slight increase as this TK becomes a full grade. But again, relatively stable. We see a little bit of drop in years 5 and 6. That could easily be offset if the housing market improves. So in general, things are stable, which is actually wonderful news. Your average district in our state right now is significantly declining. So in our full report, we got a lot of great details. One of the components that we do in our studies is, in addition to showing you enrollment projections, we also show you a capacity line. Now, that capacity is not a detailed analysis of your entire school facility. It is a classroom capacity. So we're looking at how many classrooms we have on the campus, typically that we use for actual teachers. Some of the classrooms are needed for special purposes, and we do our best to exclude those ones. And then, of course, we decide on a loading factor, which is our average number of students in each classroom. And again, we know that every room will probably have a different number of students, but we're just using an average to illustrate our capacity. So for this, we do, the next 2 pages are just samples of the information you're getting in the full report. And so for each school in the district, we show a map of that school. On that map, you'll see red dots, which represent students that live in that school's boundary and attend that school. And blue dots say, I'm still enrolled in your district, but I'm attending a different school. Right? You have flexibility in where students go to school. And then if you see the yellow dots outside that school's boundary, those are students transferring into that campus from another location within your school district. And then if we see any green dots, they're actually from outside that school's, from your whole district boundary, and those are the inter-district students coming into your district. And then for each school, we do show the enrollment projection details. And so we have 4 years of historic data and 6 years into the future for each school. That blue line you see is the school's boundary, and the red line are those attending. So in our sample here, we have Westfield Village, right? We see there's a lot more students that live in the boundary than attend that campus. But overall, the enrollment's been relatively stable. They saw an increase this year. They'll be relatively stable the next couple of years, and then we start seeing a slight decline. Again, those smaller incoming classes compared to the students that were progressing out of 8th grade into the high school is going to create a little bit of a decline. And when we look at this particular campus, right, there's no new homes projected to help offset those lower number of births that are occurring. But again, some of the other schools, you'll see lots of the development impacts, and they'll probably be the ones that you see some growth at. For the district, again, back to the district level, we have an attendance matrix. This just helps you understand all the movement that happens between campuses, the parent choices that are made in terms of where they enroll their students versus where they live. And then we have this chart. The red bars on this chart are your enrollment this school year, and the blue bars was how many students live in the boundary. Again, the key reason I like including this is because it illustrates to you that all our schools are not the same size. The highlights on this one, of course, is that at Bridgeway Island, right, we have a much larger population than some of the other schools, nearly double, I think, and just over double the number of students compared to some of the smaller campuses. We always end our report with a utilization chart. That's where we take the different information that we've presented throughout the report. I have a summary of how many classrooms we've counted on each campus, the capacity we calculated for that campus based on the number of classrooms. our current enrollment and our 6-year projected enrollment, and then our utilization. The utilization is simply we're dividing the enrollment by the capacity to see how well utilized it is. And so we do a color code there. The blue color code is used for campuses that we're showing, hey, we've got some extra space available. If we see the green, we're sort of in that ideal range, about 80%. So we probably have some room available, but you ask the principal and they're saying their campus is pretty well utilized. When we see the orange there, again, that's at Bridgeway, we're saying our campus is pretty well impacted, and some relief would be greatly appreciated. There's probably some rooms where there's just no additional, so if someone goes to enroll in 2nd grade and the 2nd grade classes are full, they're probably being shifted to a different campus. And then the last page just is a summary of our company, and so that is what we have to present. Again, a lot more details in the full report, but I'd love to be able to answer any questions you have, or again, this is really a lot of great information. We have it all in our computer system, so if there's things that we can do for you throughout the entire year, we're here to help. And I know that one of the things we were looking at is, which campuses have more space available than the others in case there's some special programs and different things you're considering. And so again, any special analysis that you may want done, we're here to help out throughout the year.
Okay, thank you so much. Are there any public comments?
No public comments.
Okay, then I'll open it up to the board comments and student board member as well. Is there any? Trustee
Alrighty.
Hunt.
Thank you for that. Can we go back to slide 9? It was the one with the new housing developments. I was just curious, and I may have missed this in trying to read this, but there are a number of new housing developments on here with the 6-year projection being 0. And it seemed like most of those are the biggest new developments coming. Can you tell us a little bit why that is?
Yeah, when a project is first being defined, it's going through the EIR process and all the infrastructure construction. And so it takes quite a while before they have their project sold out to individual builders, and then those builders build their first model homes, and then they start with their first phase. So yeah, it's just, we didn't have any confidence that any of those projects would have occupied homes within our 6-year time frame.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. And then the slide, it's slide 15, students in boundary and enrollment comparison. And this may be a broader question for staff. We can't see it up here, but in the slides, we see the boundary number and then the enrollment number. And there's a few schools that are, clearly the enrollment is much higher than the boundary. And then, based on the last slide, those are some of the most impacted schools in terms of capacity. Do we do anything to try to right size those campuses on an annual basis, or do we know why some of these campuses have that higher utilization rate than what's in their boundary?
So I can answer the question as best as I can. My team, we don't oversee enrollment, but I can speak to the team that does to be able to help us understand when a school, as he shared, is at capacity, has all of the students that they can have there, what happens? Do we right size per se? What I do know, and I can share, is that we don't say, okay, this school has fewer students, we're going to now move all of these kids over here so that we can balance those students. So with right sizing, no, we don't do that. But I can ask the team to provide you more information about our process when a school is heavily impacted or when we're basically at capacity. We have a certain number of teachers who can only be able to serve a certain number of students.
Yeah, that'd be great to get additional information on, there are some campuses that have plenty of space while others are over their boundary. So just curious, how that happens or what we intend to do about it. So we received this report with so much information. Thank you. What now? We see that there are some schools that are impacted now or maybe within the next 6 years, while other campuses could, stand to grow. What is our role now, and how does the district make plans to move forward?
So at this time, I don't think there's any necessary actions. One of the pieces of information in here is your enrollment projections that are very useful for when you're doing your budgeting. The key things we look for is if, we're aware of these developments that are being planned, but they're not to the point where we would have highlighted in orange and even red colors if we saw a school that was projected to exceed their capacity. And we don't see that right now. So no immediate action is necessary. So that's one of the things we would highlight if there was a problem on the horizon. Now, obviously, if all 9,000 of those homes get built eventually, we're going to have issues. We're going to need some new schools. But that is not on the immediate horizon. And by immediate, I mean over the next 6 years. If we see out 5-6 years that we're having issues, then we can either make choices maybe to change boundaries or start building new facilities. But we haven't reached that point yet, but we have to be aware that there's enough potential out there that we have to be prepared to take action at some point. It's just, we're not to that point yet. And the boundaries, as was just mentioned, you haven't really changed boundaries much. I think there's maybe only been some minor adjustments compared to the boundaries we had when we worked with you about 10 years ago. And so that's great because boundary changes are a challenge. But at the same time, you do offer parents choices, a very, I think, generous policy when it comes to allowing parents to enroll where they choose as long as there's space available. And again, with this information, you'll know which schools are impacted. You probably already know that. And so obviously if a school is impacted, then the opportunity to choice into that campus is not available. But for most of your campuses, it looks like that is an option. So again, it's just making you aware of the information. This time we don't have any recommendations like, oh, we need to fix this problem. Everything is smooth sailing for now. But again, we do see some challenges farther out, but we do have to watch the housing market and those particular developments, because once those homes are being framed, too late. So we want to be, again, keep track of that. Probably if we see a significant change in the housing market, we're going to want to do an update, whether that's 2 or 3 years from now, or if it takes longer. We just don't know.
And how often are we doing a study like this? Is it just kind of based on what you said, depending on market and when we feel we need it?
Yeah, some of our clients use this every year.
Okay.
Others, every 5 years or so. One of the things I recommend, because again, we don't want to waste money. We heard that earlier today. Again, we don't charge that much for our reports because we're doing up, right? We've worked with you in the past. We don't have to charge as much as if we were working with you for the first time. So the updates are not too treacherous in terms of our pricing. We're very fair. But our recommendation is always, when you see what our projections are and you're out there, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 5 years from now, and your enrollment is varying significantly from what we projected, then that's telling us the trends are changing. And it would be logical to do an update at that point.
Well, hello. Well, appreciate the data, and I think it's just good for the board to think about, especially the board members, is that we used to cap enrollment. We used to have smaller class sizes, and we used to do overflow. So we'd, students who were in BWI's area, because we had the capped enrollment from K3 when it's, at 20, that they would overflow to Southport. There's the enrollment are just the numbers. I think this also informs for kind of us to think about. because there are, you know, campuses that are 96% capacity, and we know that feels like 1,000%, right? Are there things that, and I'm just putting it out, right? The wondering is, using this information, are we going to make any policy decisions that will alleviate some of those pressures, and may, you know, create environments where there's more, you know, intentional teaching with smaller classrooms. That's a policy decision that this district made years ago, especially when my kids, right? And I would say that this is helpful data to kind of also demystify some of the things: who's in district, who's out of district, who's in boundary, not out of boundary, where's the capacity across our campuses, and where there's more capacity, should we think about specialized programs to actually increase interest in campuses that may have more capacity but lower enrollment.
Clerk Castro?
On slide 16, the other schools, there's no 2024 projections. Why is that?
We have the projections, we just didn't show a utilization factor under the other school. A lot of times we don't do that simply because some of those programs are virtual, and so they don't really have a capacity. And so just to prevent any misunderstandings, we just leave that section blank.
Some of these programs, like Clarendon, we did include it in the capacity, even though that is not we're not using it as a school, but it is a property within our district that has classrooms. So we asked to include the net classroom capacity in there, not utilization. It's not. YOLO and Washington, they also have to provide our YOLO.
Yeah, again, obviously the campus that you're using as sort of interim housing as you go through these modernization projects. So it's just showing you that it's there and being used for various purposes. But we didn't want it to impact, it's not a school with a boundary that helps, it is driving us to make decisions. Do we need to change our boundary sizes?
So would that be almost like the same for Alice Norman too? You guys didn't list that on there, but it's a property that we own, right?
I do. I have one. It's really hard for me to see, but it's okay. I have some classes, other twos, but it's really teeny tiny. And as I was trying to look at it, and I was trying to also hear what you were saying, I think I missed what you said about certain charts. So I'm not going to start all over, but I am going to ask about slide 15. The student, the red and blue one. This one here, the boundary is the blue.
Blue, yep.
And so these are kids, students that live within the boundary that we have set and attend the school, correct?
No, blue is just how many live in that boundary for the grade levels that school offers. So basically all these blue bars represent the TK8 population within that portion of the district.
That could attend that school.
Correct.
But that live in that area.
Oh.
And so then the red is what's actually in that.
Correct.
Okay.
And so when you compare the red and the blue, that's the net transfers.
Got it. So now I understand, because I was like, wait, okay. So blue is
The boundary.
what is the boundary as far as, this, like,
Who lives
here
in
in
that
this
community.
area, who lives in this area, who could possibly attend Bridgeway Island, but we have kids that clearly don't live in the boundary of Bridgeway Island, and that's the red,
Right.
and they attend. Okay.
Right, and so that's a combination of kids that are coming from other
Other
boundaries within the
areas.
district or perhaps even outside the district. And when we see the red larger than the blue, you probably have a school that is very popular perhaps, or might have special programs being offered.
Just because I'm looking at a computer, there aren't 2,000 kids out Bridgeway, I don't think.
Is
So
that the
doesn't
number?
say- The blue
No.
is not, the blue says 986 and the red is 1,062. So.
Yeah.
The difference is the 1,000,
Yes.
what is the one, so basic number?
Maybe I'll explain it once more, and if I'm repeating myself, just stop me. So when we think of, we'll talk the Bridgeway Island area, and there's a specific boundary. And so we're going to look at all of the homes within that boundary and all of the kids that live in those homes. And we're going to say, how many kids are those? That's the blue. So mine's small as well. 986 kids live in the Bridgeway Island boundary, in the homes in that boundary. However, over 1,000 kids attend the school. Yes, it's a combination, so we're not adding those. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. No. Yeah. Very good. Yeah. And I'm happy that we can see the numbers, although they're small. Yes. But even just looking at the difference between the blue and the red, that tells a story.
Correct.
There about where our students are, which schools surpass the number of students who live within that boundary. How many students are transferring into that school, whether it be from another section within our district or maybe even out of district. And within the report, there's information about students who are coming to us from out of districts as well.
So now that I understand that chart, can you help me to know which of all of these slides is the one that says that where's our capacity for those particular schools?
Yeah, it'd be slide 16 is the following
That's the
slide.
following. Okay. Now, with this slide, oh, you got extra colors. Okay, and my thing. Oh, sorry. No, I'm not that special. Okay, so with this one, the net classroom, that says how many classrooms there are? Or is that saying how many students can fit? No, that's
The
not right.
classroom is
That's
how many classrooms
So that's net is how many classrooms?
that we assume we can put teachers in.
Okay,
And then the net classroom capacity is taking those classrooms times the various number of students we put in each classroom. And of course, right, the lower grades, we usually have fewer students in the classrooms. The upper grades, usually we have a few more. And so we look at the enrollment projections to determine how many classes we need at each grade to come up with that number. But yeah, that's our capacity there in that second column.
okay, now I understand. So the current enrollment is what we currently have right now. So that matches the previous slide of the 1,062.
Two, yeah.
And now what we're saying is that's the numbers, and then this is the percentage. So we're currently at 90% capacity
Right.
for what we have at Bridgeway. But we are projecting,
We are projecting only
based off of all the
911.
other stuff that you gave me that I have to look at
Yeah.
later, that it's going to go down to 77.9%.
Right, yeah, we're dropping down to 911 on that, which will be a huge relief for the principal.
And they will be still within the net capacity of being able to house those.
Right. Now, in reality, as the number of students in that boundary drops, because we're graduating those larger 8th grade classes and bringing in fewer and fewer kindergarten students, they might stay at 90% capacity because you might allow all those families that want to go to that campus in. And so if you allow an extra 100 students into that campus, then their utilization will stay where it is, and we'll see a drop at the other schools.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but then we'll see the shift
So
of
our-
them at
our-
other schools.
Our projections assume the same number of students that are currently transferring in stay at that same level.
Thank you. I needed all of.
No problem.
Oh, yes, my shirt, it says, please be patient with from the 19th.
You
And
and
it
me
has a
both.
wagon with a buggy. So, thank you. Okay. I think that was pretty much my,
Yes.
our student has.
Yes.
Okay. So I don't remember who. Someone said that you guys used to do like a capacity per schools. So there was less students in each class with each teacher, right? So why did that stop? Was that not working? Like,
No,
what can we
that was
do?
a state mandate
Oh.
of,
Why did we change that? No, I was.
oh,
It was a board decision that was made at the time when enrollment changed.
Do you
And it was in
think that that
negotiations.
can be something to reconsider? Like that would be something smaller classes would bring to better outcomes?
I think it'd be a great discussion at the negotiating table.
Yes.
You might want your voice there. But so part of the process is we always explore it, and that becomes a conversation with our during bargaining, so union bargaining, and so that is absolutely a possible. At the time, I don't know. When I went to West Tech, it was already a policy that was adopted. Yeah, it had to do with somehow during negotiations. I don't remember what. But it's always as a policy conversation, it's always possible.
Thank you for saying it. Okay, I have some questions if the others been answered. Okay. This is so helpful. I really appreciate it. And for everyone to know too, in the public, that it is online also. And the full demographic piece is really nice to see all this. Like, look, there's my dot, there's this. I mean, it's really nice to see it down to that level. A couple questions I want to make sure, and it might have been said again, but it is a lot of information. When we see the outgoing, who are out of district, what data are you using to find that? So some of these say, they're out,
Right.
incoming from others, and then outgoing. Are we capturing who's leaving?
we are not.
Okay. Probably just because that's
If
part of
they
the
live in your district and they go to Sac City, right, we don't
Yeah.
have that information.
Okay.
If they live in your district and go to a private school, we don't have that. The information we have is based on the students enrolled in your schools. So by outgoing, we're simply saying they live in one school but attend a different school within the district.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Sorry, that was my, so outgoing to other schools is simply within our district. We know we have other students too that we are losing to out of district, and we have out of district coming in.
Right,
Oh,
it
but
could-
we do capture our incoming.
Correct,
Okay.
because they're
Thank you.
enrolled in
Yeah.
your schools.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. And then the other piece is that I know that, and maybe this, because you use what goes to the Planning Commission, I assume, but Liberty and Yarborough have been talking about adding in some senior housing components to that and others. Does that get factored into this too, or how does that work in terms of knowing when the city council maybe makes changes to plans? How do you get updated, or how do we know?
We have a pretty good relationship with the city planning department.
Okay.
And so this information excludes senior housing units that we are aware of at the time we put this report together.
Thank you.
So if every time we come back and do an update for you, right, we talk to all the projects, get all the newest research, collect the data. We get information both from the city, and where possible, we also talk to the individual developers so we can get as accurate as information as we can.
Okay.
And so, yeah, senior housing units we exclude because we know that they don't generate students.
Thank you. Very helpful. Okay. Let me see if one other question. Okay. Okay, I think those are all of my pieces, and just my comments I have 3 comments. One, it is interesting to see the Bridgewater Island has been our most impacted, and so to see those projections now go down, I know will give relief to the school, but we'll obviously have to be watching those. And this data helps us know if we need to make policy changes in terms of allowing students who are not within the boundary. Because I know visiting some of the schools, even though Stonegate here, it shows on yours that things are okay with their current space. But when you're there, it feels very tight, like every single corner is being used. And even like at Bridgeway, the principal's office becomes the counseling session, and I watch, people come in and use every space they can. So it feels very impacted, and I think we'll have to have discussions about some of those policies at some point if needed. But if our enrollment is going down at one site, then that would help with that conversation. I think the concerning piece that we need to keep a really close eye on, if I'm reading this correctly, is River City High School, because their numbers are going up. And we do have a theater going in there. How many classrooms can we put on the back of the theater underneath? Can we put in a basement to this theater? But I think that's an important piece for us. And then just as a board for policy, because when I first came to this board, Yarborough we thought was coming in within the next couple years, and we needed to get ready for it. And the district does have property in these developments. So we thought, gosh, we're going to have to get ready for a school any minute. And then here we are, it's been 10 years later, nothing. So more than that, really. And so I think what we'll need to do some work is really understanding what triggers a new school, how do we fund a new school, and what that looks like. So as future boards are here and they are watching this information and they have a lot of clarity around what are the triggers for a new school, what does that look like, how are these?
I did want to point out that one of the reasons why River City is going up is because they're leaving their elementary. That's how it's being projected. At least that's how I'm seeing it, right?
Oh.
So 2024, 25, like right now, Ridgeway, 2030 is what, 4 years? So if those numbers are going down, those kids are leaving the school.
So you're saying maybe after this?
Yeah, so that's kind of how I'm seeing they're leaving elementary school, they're going to high schools.
Correct.
So that's why our high school got a bigger
If
number.
we see this, so that'll be important to know if it's a bubble.
That's how I'm looking at
It's
it.
theoretically a bubble.
Okay.
Because, we saw that grades 6 through 12 are pretty stable, but then we start dropping off as we get down to kindergarten. So in 4 years from now, those 6th graders are going to be 10th graders, so you still have those large numbers in the high school. And of course, they're still growing a little over time from year to year. But by the time our 4th graders are seniors, that's 8 years from now. Then we're going to start seeing smaller numbers unless or until the housing market. So if the housing market stays miserable, then in about 8 years, we'll start seeing some relief at the high school. But probably by then, the housing market will be booming, and so high school will get even more challenging.
Can I add that it's not actually only about building new schools. We have clear capacity at other schools. And it's about programming and enticing programming at schools that are historical, right? So that could be a complicated conversation for the community too. Because it's clear that there's room on those sites that have been here for the beginning, like 50, 60, 70 years. So I know a lot of people don't understand, new development, new school, but I would also push back on, we have such a rich history in Washington Unified. We also may consider what type of program encourages people to go to those lower capacity schools that have had such a rich history in Washington Unified, which is math.
Yeah. And just to that point, I think, we've made it very clear to the public when they've asked for a new school and we've seen things that our enrollment is lower than it used to be. I mean, we've been very clear about it comes down to enrollment numbers in the district. But if you look at this, it says 6-year projection, possibly another 1,451 students. This is in a very specific area, and then up to 9,000 when it's done in one condensed area. So I think, if that happens to the 9,000, there is going to happen. But I agree with you. In the interim, there's a lot of with programming. there any other? All right, well, thank you very much. This is very,
You're
very
welcome.
informative.
And more questions come up, feel free to email us. We'll help you out.
Great, thank you. I appreciate it. We all. Okay. So that now takes us to our next piece, which is our student social-emotional learning and school climate and culture update. And that is with Autry Streak, our Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services. Welcome, and Rose.
Good evening, Board, Superintendent, staff, and our community members and staff who are still here with us. This evening, I am joined by our coordinator for social emotional learning, Rosario Arcona. And together tonight, we will attempt to shed some light on what our students are experiencing in our schools, our 3rd through 12th graders. We're going to hear their voice by way of some survey data that we will share with you this evening, and then talk a little bit about our next steps. And then we've organized the presentation so that there are some strategic stopping points so that you don't have to hold your questions until the very end, okay? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rosie just to kind of set the purpose a little bit more. And then I'll make just a quick comment about the connection to our board policy for equity.
Next slide, please. Good evening. We're pleased to share with you information about and the results of 2 student surveys that we administered to our students in grades 3 through 12 last fall in November. The first survey is the Cal Hope Student SEL survey, which students will take again next month, starting March 17th. The second survey administered to our 3rd through 12th grade students was the Strategic Plan survey, which was first given in fall 2021. And students took the survey again this last November because that marked the midpoint of our 5-year strategic plan. Both surveys help us to monitor school culture and climate and to respond to students' social emotional learning needs. So both surveys do align with our strategic plan. They do meet all 4 goals, but especially our goal of supporting the whole child and its corresponding measure of students' perception of safety, sense of belonging, academic challenge, and access to timely supports. Both surveys also contribute to eliminating disproportionalities and its corresponding measure of success, which is access to emotional, behavioral, mental, and physical health supports. Being responsive to data from both surveys also supports all 4 of our equity principles. And then finally, both surveys align with 3 of our 12 strategic priorities under pillars A and D. Those 3 priorities are numbers 1, 2, and 12, which are focused in summary on cultivating safe, welcoming, and culturally responsive learning environments. Next slide, please.
And so in Board Policy 0415, we've outlined 10 ways that we will continue to assess the investments that we make in support of students. And so in particular, tonight's presentation addresses 1, 4, 5, and 10. 1, really mentioning just routine assessment and making sure that data is disaggregated by student groups so that we can make informed decisions about how are we providing individualized supports for students. Item 4 talks about our priority in sustaining initiatives in our district that promote positive school climates, such as PBIS, our investments in social emotional learning, and MTSS. And then item 5 is our commitment to intentionally research and adopt curriculum and instructional materials that accurately reflect and respectfully reflect the diversity of our students as well. And then 10 is for us to encourage and support student groups on our campuses. Next slide, please.
So the CalHope SEL survey measures the 5 dimensions that you see there on my left. And the 3 dimensions that are bolded align to or are very similar to the strategic plan survey dimensions you see bolded on my right. For example, some items under safety and connection on the CalHope SEL survey are similar to some items under the dimension student supports and school climate on the strategic plan survey. As another example, some items under experiences with culturally and linguistically responsive environments on the CalHope survey are very similar to the dimension representativeness of materials on the strategic plan survey. For the strategic plan survey, you can see that the dimension of representativeness of materials was only included on the strategic plan survey for grades 3 through 5 only. And then the dimension support for students with diverse characteristics was only on the strategic plan survey for grades 6 through 12 only. Some items on the teaching, quality teaching and learning were not mirrored in the CalHope SEL survey because that survey measures only climate and culture as well as well-being and not the quality teaching and learning.
And so for the strategic plan survey, our students in grades 3 through 5, their survey was a 33-question survey. And then for our 6th through 12th graders, there were 50 items that they had to respond to on the survey. And again, like Rosie mentioned, students took both surveys in November of this school year. Next. Our first pause for any questions you may have so far.
Okay, good.
This is a comparison between the statewide averages and our district data. 94 other districts in our state administered this survey in the fall. You can see that we are above the state average in our participation rate and also our overall favorability. And favorability just refers to the percentage of positive responses. We also mirror the state average in terms of our descending order of favorability by dimension. And we are a little higher than the state average in all of the dimensions. And on the next slide, you'll see that our highest, next slide, please. Our highest dimension was in experiences with culturally and linguistically responsive environments at 82%. And this part of the report sorts the dimensions, as I alluded to earlier, from highest to lowest favorability. So you can see we have also room to grow in all of them, but especially in emotional experiences and opportunities for student voice and leadership. If you do it, thank you. The little green bars there show that since the last survey in March or spring 2024, we grew by 3% in overall favorability in the dimension resources for coping. And then we grew by 4% in each of the other 4 dimensions since last spring. If there was a decrease, those bars would be in red.
Okay, so that was just some brief information on the CalHope survey. I'm going to switch gears and talk a little bit about our data from the strategic plan student survey data. And so what you see listed on this slide is favorability by dimension. And so again, favorability means what percentage of students answered the questions within each domain I keep saying domain, but dimension is what I mean. Did they answer with a positive response? I strongly agree, or I agree to whatever the question was asking them. So they're, in essence, they feel positive about what's being asked of them. And so here we see in the first row, the overall student participation compared for this year compared to the last time students took it. So in fall 2021, we had 975 elementary students who took the survey. This year we had 1,009 students who took the survey. And then here are the 5 dimensions. So student engagement, student support and school climate, quality teaching and learning, major problems in the school, representativeness of materials. And so in the blue column, you see that's the data from fall 2021. And then for fall 2024, you see that in that salmon color. And then the difference is in the column without color, the white column. And as you can see for elementary, our overall favorability went down in just about every domain, with the exception of major problems in the school. That's where you want it to go down. So even though it was a decrease, that's a positive sign. That means that for that domain, more kids answered in a way that showed that major issues in their school have declined from the last time a different group of kids took that same survey. And I just wanted to make a couple of other comments on this slide. Let's see, so again, there were 33 total questions. And for student engagement, there's 5 questions that make up that dimension. Student support and school climate, that one has the most items at 13. Support for students with diverse characteristics, that one is, let's see. I'm sorry, you changed slides on me. We're still on elementary. 13 for student support and school climate. Quality teaching and learning, that's 9 items. Major problems in the school, that's 5 questions. And then representativeness of materials, that's only 1 item that students are answering. And so under quality teaching and learning, a sample question is, my teachers help me learn from my mistakes. And then for another one is, my teachers expect me to do my best all the time. My teachers ask me to explain my answers. So kids answer, I agree with that statement, or I strongly agree. And if they answer in one of those 2 ways, then they show up in the, it shows up in the favorability percentage. So that's what you're looking at there. I think that's it for that one. And so on the Cal Hope data, you'll see it broken out by individual grade level. But for the strategic plan, its grade level spans 3rd through 5th, 6th through 8th, and then 9th through 12. Next slide. And so here we're looking at middle school. Again, the overall student participation compared to the 2 years. 2021, 1,190 students took the survey. This past fall, 999 students, which was a difference of 191 students. And so here are their dimensions: student engagement, student support and school climate, support for students with diverse characteristics, quality teaching and learning, major problems in the school. And example questions for support for students with diverse characteristics. Let me see. I'm just going to go to my notes. So example questions for support for students with diverse characteristics. Adults in this school tell students how important it is to treat all students with respect regardless of differences. So that's one example. Adults in this school are supportive of students from different racial, ethnic groups. And then for major problems in school, for that dimension, some sample questions are, the following are major problems in my school: bullying, teasing, and/or picking on students repeatedly, racial, ethnic discrimination or harassment, discrimination and/or harassment against people because of their sexual orientation. So that's just an example of some of the questions that our middle schoolers answered. And then we'll go to our 9th through 12th graders. And so they have the same exact dimensions as the middle schoolers, same questions exactly. So in fall of 2021, we had 1,166 students take the survey. In this fall, we had 1,768 students participate in the survey, which was a positive difference of 602. So a more complete picture of the experiences that our students are having on a daily basis. And again, the same categories, the same dimensions. And here we saw an overall positive trend in all dimensions. But again, those numbers represent YOLO students, River City students, as well as middle college students. Let's see. I think that's it for that one.
So the platform through which we administer the CalHope Student SEL survey is Kelvin. And one feature of Kelvin is that it provides us with heat maps. Heat map colors change based on the subgroups that we filter by. So the colors are actually based on the favorability from the first column. So here, this heat map is for grade level, district-wide. The heat map is meant to draw our eyes from the least favorable on the top left to the most favorable, which would be on the bottom right. The most positive differences are dark blue, and then the most disparities are shown in orange. And then where you see gray, that represents the median favorable score, if you remember your statistics class. Third and fourth graders have the highest overall favorability at 82% each. And we do have the most opportunities to grow in safety and connection with our 6th graders, 8th graders, and 10th graders. And then in previous slides, I already mentioned that we have room to grow in emotional experiences and opportunities for student voice and leadership. And so that's why you see those two dimensions with the highest orange bars, if you will. Next slide, please. Here is the heat map for race ethnicity. Disaggregating the data by race ethnicity shows us that the largest disparity in favorable responses is with our Black or African American students.
So the strategic plan student survey reports also have heat maps. They just look a little bit differently. The colors are different. And so let me just explain a little bit. Here we have, again, the data broken out by race and ethnicity. On the left, you see the questions that make up this one particular dimension. The column just to the right is the average favorability for that question. So 80% for question 1. And then everything to the right shows you how did that student group compare to the average. So if it's green, that means that it's above average. There were more favorable responses in that student group than the average. And then if it's red, it's the opposite. That means that that student group had fewer, it was less than average in terms of favorability. And again, just like Rosie mentioned, a heat map is really meant to draw your attention, draw your eyes to the areas of the most need. And so here you see, this is just one, I'm not going to show you every single dimension. This is just a sample. But the trend is pretty much the same in each dimension. So remember, there are 33 questions on the elementary survey. So for American Indian, Alaskan Native, out of 33 questions, they were below the average favorability on 6 items, okay? Asian or Pacific Islander, they were below the average on 9 of the 33 items in total. And then for Black African American, they were less than the average on 25 out of 33 items on the entire survey. Hispanic Latino, they were only below the average on 5 of the 33 items. Our multiracial students were below the average on 28 of the 33 items. Students who selected other as their race or ethnicity were below the average on 10 of the 33 items. And then our white students were below the average on 19 of the 33 items. And remember, this is 3rd through 5th grade. And then the math is not going to equal 1,009 because there were 43 students that declined to state their race, and so their data is not represented here. I apologize for that. And so again, green equals there was a higher percentage of favorable responses than the average. Red means a lower percentage of favorable responses compared to the average. Okay? And then we'll go to middle school by ethnicity on the next slide. And here I gave you a sample of a different dimension. This dimension, remember, was particular to just our 6th through 12th graders, support for students with diverse characteristics. And so you can see a sample question is, adults in this school are supportive of students from different racial ethnic groups. And then you can see the rest there. And I'm going to do the same thing I did for elementary. So of the 50 questions for our first group that's represented here, 36 for American Indian and Alaskan Native students. They were below the average on 36 out of 50 items. Our Asian Pacific Islander students were below the average 21 out of 50 items. Our Black or African American students were below the average on 33 out of 50 items. Our Hispanic and Latino students were below the average on 13 of 50 items. Our white students, 19 out of 50. And then our multiracial students, 40 out of 50. And those who marked other, 17 out of 50. And those who declined to state, 39 out of 50. And then for a different dimension, major problems in the school, our American Indian, Alaskan Native, multiracial, and Black students were below the average on all items in that domain. And so again, that's really an area of focus for us. That's where the heat map draws our attention to. So that was our middle schoolers. And now we move to our 9th through 12th graders. And so the sample dimension that I've posted here is that one that I keep mentioning, major problems in the school. So you can see what makes up that dimension. And I'll start with our American Indian, Alaskan Native. Out of 55 items, 17, they were below the average. For our Asian Pacific Islanders, they were below the average on 14 items. Our Black students were below the average for 9th through 12th graders, 44 out of 50 items. Our Hispanic and Latino students were below the average on 12 survey items. Our white students were below the average on 11 items. Our multiracial students were below the average on 46 items. And those who identify as other were below the average on 24 items. And our students who declined to state their race or ethnicity were below the average on 38 out of 50 items. I just have some other notes. Our Asian, Black, and multiracial students were all below the average percent of favorable responses in major problems at school, as you can pretty much see there. And our Hispanic and white students are above the average on almost every question in the, let me see which domain it is. Give me just a quick second. For student support and school climate. And so just to bring up one more point, in that same domain, student supports and school climate, questions 8, 9, and 10. So question 8 is, my school is a welcoming place. Question 9, I feel like I belong at this school. Question 10, I feel emotionally safe at my school. Our Black students were red on those 3 questions for our secondary students. And this is a good spot to ask questions.
Just really quick, early on, I think it was like 78% response rate. Is this the one where they have the Cal Hope one? Is that the one where they have the option to opt out, or
Yes.
what's, and then for the strategic plan survey, do they have, I can't remember if we had the option to opt out on this too.
Yes, parents had the option to opt out of both surveys.
Okay, so that's probably why we're seeing that 78%, or are there other reasons that attribute to, aside from not being at school, but to not taking the survey?
I believe that the opted out students on the Kelvin platform aren't counted in the participation rate, because if they're not participating, they're not counted as not participating. Does that make sense?
Sorry, again.
So if they opted out, we put that into the Kelvin system, and so then that means they're not counted as part of the 78% participation rate. So for Kelvin.
Why
Um,
isn't it higher?
Which,
we-
I mean, it's higher than the state average. I was just wondering why we thought that
Yeah.
was. And
We know,
it's okay.
yes, so we know that because we needed to administer the Cal Hope survey in the fall, and we also needed to administer the strategic plan survey in the fall, because that's when we administered it in 2021. I think some of our students may have experienced some survey fatigue. While the Cal Hope survey is only 23 items, the strategic plan survey had more questions on it as well.
Thank you.
And I think I know I spoke to, I think I went and visited a lot of sites last week, and I think a lot of principals thought that we had seen this data because it was on their desk, and they were like, we have some concern, I could tell this was on their mind, and they knew that the data did not look great. And so there were concerns. But I also was told that in some cases, some teachers thought they gave the survey because they had given one, and then they didn't realize to give the other. So I know that there were some cases where just, I think probably having 2 surveys so close together is probably a challenge. And there might have been some challenge understanding that too, in terms of giving it.
That was my quick question is, when do they give this survey? Is it during instructional time, or is it like, how we get catapult? When are they getting the survey?
Yes, they're both were administered during the school day, within a 2-week window, so that there was flexibility on when it could be given. Less flexibility at the high school because there has to be agreement about which period is giving up 30 minutes of their instructional time for the survey. But there's more flexibility with the 3rd through 5th graders, and then the schools decide how it would be administered for 6th through 8th and then 9th through 12th. But it was within a 2-week time period. And we monitored the participation rates as we got to the end of the window, and we extended it if we needed to. I think we did at the high school for a couple of days. They needed a little bit more time.
Student board member Gutierrez.
Okay, so I have some questions because I remember taking surveys, but one of my concerns is that, like you said, one of the surveys was really long. So maybe like in the future, making surveys that are not so long, because children lose attention span really quick. And I'm kind of like, I'm a little concerned that there might be like potential biases with these results, because again, the questions were amazing. They're very good questions, asked very clearly, but these students are essentially obligated to take these surveys, so maybe they're not really giving their honest output because they're just trying to get it over with. So I'm like concerned that maybe like the results, not that they're not like good, but for example, a student could have just clicked yes for every single thing, and that like defeats the purpose of making a survey, because then we're not getting accurate outcomes. So is there like a way, do you think we could like construct surveys in
a short amount of time? And so when we presented this data or shared this data with our school leaders, that was one of the things we cautioned against, is to make sure they looked at other data points before rushing to a conclusion just based on one data point. So that's why we correlated the data from both surveys. We encourage schools to also look at just their observational data, what's happening at their schools on a daily basis, what kind of complaints are they getting from parents, from students, what kind of office referral data is coming their way. So we don't use just one data point to make our decisions. We try to take a more holistic approach before decisions are made. So, and really good points you made. Thank you.
Thank you. Because I feel like it's very time consuming, like what you guys are doing and taking the survey, so you wouldn't want any factors interfering with that data, which would just back you up further.
And we really recognize how long the strategic plan survey is. And so one thing that Rosie and I have been discussing is the possibility of using the Kelvin platform to create similar surveys, but much shorter.
I think that's a good idea.
So this was taken this school year, 24-25. And based off of the demographic chart that I was just given, it says our current enrollment for River City is 2,168. But we only surveyed, or we have a number of 17, either more magnified, 1768, correct? So what I'm understanding is, you said we don't count the ones that have opted out. So we pretty much had about 400 kids that opted out, that didn't.
No, our opt-out rate is not that high. We just, again, people didn't complete the survey. And remember that number for secondary includes middle college students as well as YOLO students.
So this has YOLO and River City?
Yes.
Okay.
And middle college.
Oh, yes. Okay. So with that being said, is it possible to obtain the separation of each site? Because based off our audience that we had today, I don't know, as you pointed out, that whether or not this information may be a true reflection of our middle or our high schoolers, due to the fact that if we're lumping all of our high schools that have totally different areas of concerns and whatnot, then we're not truly grasping a clear understanding of what's happening, at least for our level, because I'm sure Washington Middle has other issues in their brain, you know, got to go to college, to the college site versus our students at River City discussing vaping and whatnot. So I think that there is they are different. Each school site is different, right? And I'm not saying that the middle school or the elementary school is not as important, but because of, especially since we focused on major problems in the school, and that was what was presented to us, it's, I think, really important that we see which sites feel that there is a major problem versus others, regardless of the demographic.
That's an excellent point. And when we shared the data with school sites, they got it by school. And they were still able to compare themselves to the secondary average. And we can definitely provide you with that same report.
Please, because I think that's definitely going to help us also understand, as you pointed out, like maybe some of these kids are just going through, if that's the case and they're at your site, then we'll be able to look at that versus if we're putting in a kid who's at Washington Middle and they're thinking this is the best since sliced bread, it's going to skew the data. And that's one of the things we're not trying to do. We're not trying to have data skewed and made to look a certain way. We want transparent. So I really think it would be important for the future, or this time around, you'll give it to us. But in the future, you know, showcase, you know, the difference just a little bit. So
we can definitely present it by school site.
And I would request Superintendent Drake that also he may ask our leaders to share the data for their site as well, since they, you know, with their leadership team, just as they're using that data, making sure that it gets down to staff, parents.
Yes, we'll talk a little bit about that in our next step slides. Thank you.
And I think just looking at this, what we can all see, it's very glaring that our Black and African American students are at alarming numbers in every area, which makes it even more alarming at our high school, at our in our middle school, and at elementary too. And so it's clear we need to be strategic in some of that work. And then the other piece is just as a whole, seeing how students move through our organization, which I think is probably true in many school districts, of their connectedness to school diminish as they go up in grades. And how can we kind of harness and capture their connectedness when they're younger and keep that, I think, is key for us.
I think a lot of to do with the fact when they're younger, they're told that they're a wildcat, that they're a otter, that they're dragon, all the other. When they get to the high school, it's like, I'm a dragon and an otter and a duck, and we're all supposed to be one as a raider. But somehow, some way, we have to start to transition that in the middle school. I know we've been kind of working on it, but it's really hard when we also compete, and it's friendly competition on the soccer games and the flag football and the basketball. But when you're cheering on your kid to get somebody to do something and they're on the other team, then you're in high school and you see that kid who, I remember you from the basketball court. I don't know, somehow, like I said, like it's a friendly competition, but at the same time, it's like, oh, you're a Duck, but you're from Southport. Oh, well, you're in, maybe it's not, or whatever. It's that whole, the pride of where they started stays with them into the high school. And I don't know if that's another reason why they don't really, like, this is where we all mesh together, but this is not where all are. I don't know if that makes sense.
Does. But I would also say what is alarming is that even third through fifth graders are saying they don't look forward to going to school. It's not their happy place. And many students in my school they try their best to learn, right? Like those are pretty low for third through fifth grade in my mind. Like it's not their happy place. So overall, we have a lot of growth, a lot of opportunity that we need to kind of pour in. That was one. I'm like, what do you mean? You're like third, like this half of our population is saying, I don't want to even be in elementary school, which is problematic. The other kind of glaring, there's lots of pink everywhere, right? And I would say that we need to do better than 70% on a lot of these, indicators. But the harassment side, the bullying, those are really glaring. Even if they are across, like, all high schools, it's confirming what we saw, right? Like, I don't necessarily need more disaggregated data. This actually confirms what we saw this tonight. Even if you had a handful of middle school, Washington Middle College, even if you had like YOLO, like slide 16 is pretty telling. Right, what they were saying is true. Yes, like shorten the survey, all of that, but I'm also hearing that this is actually probably could be worse if they're all saying everything's positive. Like if that is true, that people give up and say yes, 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 this is actually a higher number, higher data, more positive data than what's really happening. Right, so it's skewed higher, not lower. We don't know.
We don't know that
We don't know,
part,
but I'm just saying that if people are yes, it's like you'd say that it's biased positive. So I'm like, that's pretty sad if that's biased positive. But all to say we have a lot of work to do on bullying, on harassment, on all of these things because yes, we can do all those, but this is not data. I mean, I don't mean and we all have to kind of work. I think we've seen that. We've talked about that on this board. It just confirms the voices of the public and what we've been talking about. And we need to do more.
But it is good to know that there was some of these questions, because I thought it was going to be like, do you agree? And it all be positive, so it would be. So it's nice to know that some of them were flipped. So it kind of makes me think that they did read some of them, like I wasn't just going down. So in that.
Going back to like a lot of the stuff people talked about last night, I think we need to start building better habits for children in elementary, and we need to invest in the younger kids in order for them to carry on and have a good education going on to high school, because a lot of the stuff I see, at least currently at River City, it's not the upperclassmen setting fire alarms off. It's not us smoking in the bathroom. It's the freshmen who are coming in with these behaviors. And I'm thinking that maybe we're not doing a great job in enforcing strict enough. We're being too lenient on them in middle school. We're just giving them a slap on the wrist and saying, oh, okay, we'll let it slide. But if we show students that they can act out and just justify it as, oh, they're being children, they're going to continue those habits growing on, like as they grow older. So maybe.
Yes.
And this is why we love having our student board members here.
And And Mariana, to your point, when we go to our next steps, we'll address a little bit about consequences and discipline.
Value add is that she's right, that half of our elementary school don't want to be. Right, you're losing them. We're losing them.
So we need to figure out what can we do to make these students enjoy school from a young age. Because if you enjoy school when you're beginning, you're more likely to enjoy it as you go through, rather than these kids are in first grade and they're like, I don't want to go to school. So what can we do to make, as a community, to make school better, not only for one school, one campus, but for everybody? How can we evenly distribute?
And I know it'll be shared next as you go on past questions, but it is absolutely true that the work needs to be shared with staff and with the community and with the families to see this. It's obviously not our good data that we're sharing, but that's why we need to bring them in and show this work to be done. And so I look forward to what you're doing now, the next step. Okay.
Can you still hear me if I don't hold down this microphone?
Do you want to
towards
move it? You can also move the podium down. I know that you have competing heights, but.
Thank you. So we want to start off with some celebrations, move into growth areas, and then our next steps. These are data points we can celebrate, and I did mention some of these in our previous slide. So I'll just reiterate, we did see on the CalHope SEL survey increased overall favorability by 4% since spring 2024. We also saw increased favorability in each of the 5 dimensions. One dimension, a 3% growth, and then the other remaining ones, 4%. And then our dimension with the highest favorability district-wide is culturally and linguistically responsive environments, which saw a 4% increase since the spring 2024 pulse, which is what we call it in Kelvin. And we also saw 100% participation rate at 1K8 and 2 3rd through 5th segments at 2 schools, and then 90 to 100% participation rates at 2 K8s, 2 3rd through 5ths, 1 middle school, and 1 high school.
And then for the strategic plan survey, we were able to pull out a few areas of celebration or places to, kind of build on. So we saw that we had more kids participate in the survey this time than in 2021. And for our 9th through 12th graders, there was some increased overall favorability in all the dimensions from 2021 to 2024. With that, still a long way to go. And then for our elementary and our high school students, we saw some of the items within the major problems in school dimension decrease. And then we'll go into our growth areas.
So the item under opportunities for student voice and leadership that had the lowest favorability, and in fact, it was the item with the lowest favorability in the entire survey. So again, there's 23 items in the CalHope survey, is this item, and it had 63% favorability. And that one is, I think that my answers on this survey will help make changes at my school. Our participation rate, we do want to increase it from that 78% to 90 or even 100%, because it's important that we hear from all of our students. And in fact, for this next survey, we are making modifications so that our students with disabilities and students in our SDC classes are also more included in the survey so we can hear from them.
And then for the strategic plan survey data, student survey data, clearly we have some opportunities to support our middle school students in all dimensions because we saw drops from 2021 to 2024 in all 5 dimensions for our 6th through 8th graders. And then in the dimension of major problems in schools, we saw across the board some percentages of racial discrimination or harassment, in particular at the high school and the middle school. So we have some digging in to do there.
As far as our next steps, we do use the CalHope SEL survey data to guide culture climate best practices for this school year and next year. One of the established structures that we have with our site leaders is we guide them in a data analysis protocol. And then just recently, we offered a reflection tool that lists the key SEL, PBIS, and restorative practice evidence-based strategies that align with and support specific SEL and strategic plan survey dimensions. This is our first year of adoption of evidence-based SEL curriculum, which will support our educators to strengthen those proactive and tier 1 SEL practices, both school-wide and in the classrooms. And then as a result of our attendance at the SEL Exchange Conference in November, we did come back and relook at our 3-year teaching and learning plan in our Ed Services Department. And we then more explicitly and in more detail included SEL as part of that plan. And then in terms of being more intentional about supporting staff to close the feedback loop with students so that students feel like their voices are heard, we are working on a template, a slide deck that teachers can customize so that they can share their class survey results with students. And they can then facilitate students to identify sort of glows and grows and elicit their input about the grows. I think that when students feel like their voice is heard, then their voice is elicited in the problems in the classroom or how things are run in their classroom, they have ownership, they're invested, they hold themselves accountable and each other accountable. And so we hope that this tool will offer a consistent way for teachers to honor students being thoughtful about taking the survey. And then we also will support our student leadership teams to engage in data analysis and action planning around both the CalHope survey and the strategic plans.
So for item 4, communicating survey results with staff and families, like I mentioned before, we've already shared the data with principals and assistant principals with the expectation that they walk their leadership teams through the data and then also share that data with the staff at large and making sure that teachers are given the enough support to share the data with their students as well. Making sure that even though we've done CalHope for a few years now, just making sure that it's routine after the survey, the data is shared with students in a more meaningful way. And then number 5, other data points, like I mentioned before, encouraging the school sites to look at other data points to inform their next steps. Rosie created a menu, if you will, of some evidence-based practices that, based on their data, school sites should be agreeing to 1 or 2 practices that they're going to implement school-wide that will have a positive impact on school climate and culture for all kids. And then we also just want to keep equipping our staff with training and professional learning that's centered on culturally responsive pedagogy and strategies. And then to Mariana's point earlier, one thing that our student services team is working on right now in conjunction with the school leaders is updating our WUSD discipline matrix. We have, enough data that shows us that we may not be issuing discipline in an even-handed, consistent way across sites. And so that's one of our focus areas for this year, is to get that updated and then provide training to staff on that as well. And we also want to continue to prioritize some of the investments we've made, programs that support some of the student groups that we saw are consistently having a negative experience in school. And so looking at how are those programs meeting their targets, what data can we show that shows that it's making a positive impact, so that we can make a decision of whether or not to continue those investments. Any questions?
Are there any questions from the public or comments?
No comment.
Thank you. Opening up to us, I'm sorry that we've lost our student board member, but she eloquently gave us some important feedback. Are there any additional comments from the board about next steps?
I have one, just because I don't know what slide this is, but it was the celebration slides, CEL and strategic plan, Cal Hope survey, and then the strategic plan. You kind of said that there was, said that there was some participation rate. We had 90, 100%. I think I heard you say one middle school.
Go ahead, Rose.
Yes, so for this fall Cal Hope SEL survey, we had 90 to 100% participation rates for 2 K-8s, 2 3rd through 5ths, 1 middle school, and 1 high school.
What middle school do we have? Because yeah.
They take it separate. Middle school.
Yeah,
take it
so,
separate from
yeah,
the
so on the,
I was like,
I'm so sorry.
confused.
I meant to, so when Kelvin produces the report, it does it by 3rd through 5th, separate from 6th through 8, which I'm calling middle school.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah, not an actual middle school.
Okay, because you
Yes,
said the K
and
through
then-
8s, and then I'm like, so
Yeah,
what
and then
middle
high
school
school.
do we have
I'm sorry,
that I don't know about?
I should have
the
clarified.
past 2 years.
Yeah, and so when I say 2 3rd through 5ths, it's 2 schools where all of their 3rd through 5th grades
Gotcha.
had 100% participation.
Got it. And then the pretty much 6 through 8, all 6 through 8, or one area of 6 through 8.
One 6th through 8th school had a participation rate of between 90 to 100%.
The 6th through 8th graders at one of our K-8s
Thank you.
had
Okay.
100% participation.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I'm sorry. I needed that clarity. You know me. I needed that. Okay, sorry. I just needed to confirm that I wasn't misunderstanding.
And that's 100% the people who did not opt out.
So for example, the 1 K-8 that had 100% participation, they had 100% participation of all the students that didn't opt out. Actually, there was one school that kinder through 8th grade. 3rd through 8th grade, I'm sorry. 3rd through 8th grade at one of our K-8s had 100% participation rate, not counting those that opted. And we only have a handful of options.
I think then just thinking about this, and it is a little bit tricky because there's 2 surveys in one. And so while we see that we did decline in elementary and middle school, their numbers were still higher in high school, and the high school did have growth and went improved on one of the surveys. And so I think what is probably an important thing for maybe us to talk about in the future and staff to move through this. I'm not one to normally say we will increase by 10% on, I'm not normally one to say that about certain test data, but I feel like this is one that needs that type of urgency, because then all eyes are on it, and then staff all see what are their questions, and when you know them, it helps reframe you when you're teaching too, to say, well, look, you talked about this issue here, and this is why we have this change. It just helps really focus on what are the high needs when we do that. And so I really think that we need to really look at what is a realistic increase, and let's really push that. And because clearly the work needs to happen. And then when seeing how concerning that is, that students are saying, we've invested a lot in student leadership, and we've invested a lot in community schools and additional resources. So it's concerning even more to see this, because there are more things in place than there have been. So I'm wondering, maybe Dr. Hildreth, maybe with Yorgos, maybe we can think about having even a video that goes to students, like that a teacher can put in their Google Classroom or something that says, maybe we can do it together as a board, just thinking outside the box. But here's how we use your survey data, and here's what's happening at a board level. And your school sites are coming up with their own goals to address this as well, and really leading with that work, because it's clear that change needs to be made. And I think that would be an important way to show some immediate that they're being heard. Okay. Right, yeah.
Can I add something? Sorry. Lost it. Oh, you mentioned, we asked the site leaders to look at the data and come up with a plan moving forward. If we could see, down the road, kind of what those strategies are that they came up with per site, I think would be helpful, especially seeing the data per site later, and maybe that can help us see that path forward. And we talked a lot about how teenagers may have viewed this survey, but my 9-year-old fourth grader came home and they asked us some really weird questions today at school. So, we have to take all of that into consideration when you see these types of results. We don't know what kind of headspace anybody's in, or just the way they interpret, for a fourth grader is going to interpret it very differently than someone who's a little bit.
I shared before that my daughter had said they asked if school was safe on the survey, and I said, absolutely not. And I said, you don't feel safe? What happened? And she said, because the yard supervisor says don't run on the playground, and people still run to the line, Mom. And so I think that goes to that. I was like, oh, that wasn't quite the mark we were going for. So you're right. We don't always know what's going through their mind, which is why we need. Okay.
One more thing.
Oh, yeah.
I know you mentioned for the next steps that you have a slide template that you're going to be sharing with teachers so that they can customize. If you can share that with us as well, I would like to see what it is that you plan on giving to our teachers. I would also highly recommend speaking with our student board representative and kind of get an idea and a feel of how your plan is to have a teacher do this. Perhaps there are certain teachers or certain areas or certain places that this actually can be done, and her having the, kind of like a knowledge of how the school is and what might work best. Because if you have a teacher who they may not feel, they're the ones who are saying they don't feel safe, and then they're having this, all right, you guys all said this is what you feel, so have at it. I don't want to foster that type of feeling, or animosity, or oh gosh, they know. Instead, I want to create a safe place where they can have that dialogue. So as you guys are coming up with this game plan, highly recommend reaching out to her, as well as any other student leaders we have on our.
And I can add that I'm meeting with my advisory that I have at River City, YOLO, and Washington Middle College, and all of our student board members are on the advisory, so that we're getting their voices plus the voices of other peers. And that is really the purpose of the advisory. We usually bring to them, there's an issue that we've thought about and we want to get their input, but this would be a topic, for example, we would give them an overview of, this is what the data is saying about their schools, because each school has its own advisory, to get their input. And then we're looking into, for next school year, I'm going to be adding an advisory for 6, so that we're increasing opportunities for our students to tell us. Surveys is one way, but then following up and giving them that opportunity for dialogue really helps us look at nuances that a survey may not.
Be with the discipline matrix as well. That is
Input.
Thank you.
okay. That takes us to the consent agenda. Are there any comments, public comments on the consent agenda?
No comment.
Any, or can I get a motion?
Move.
Moved
I
by-
second.
Thank you. Moved by Vice President Cox, seconded by Trustee Wong. All in favor?
Aye.
I too vote aye. That takes us to action item 1, approve of the contract with Universal Engineering Services Inc. for preliminary environmental impact assessment, PEA for Elkhorn Village modernization. This Lieutenant Stovall, our business.
Thank you. This evening, we're asking for approval of a contract with Universal Engineering Services. This is related to the Elkhorn Village Modernization Project. During a project, we are required to do environmental testing of the soil. And back in December 2023, you approved a contract with Mid-Pacific Engineering to do the phase 1 of the environmental site assessment. Within the scope of work, it explained that should the report that's submitted to the Department of Toxic Substance Control result in some additional testing being required, that we would come back to you to request approval for those services, and that is what we're doing now. What UES, Universal Engineering Services, will do is they will do specialized testing for hazardous materials within the ground. Why? Because that area was formerly used for agriculture purposes, and so we want to make sure that that soil in the ground is safe.
Are there any public comments?
No public.
Okay. Are there any board comments?
Quick question. The UE or the have we had any other reports before the one that we're going to be doing now, like soil reports, like in the history of Elkhorn? Do we know?
I can't say definitively, but I would imagine so. Whenever there's any construction that's occurring, we are required to have those reports done. We had those reports conducted and those inspections conducted with the Westfield Village modernization, with Westmore Oaks, even with some of the ESSER projects, because we are going into the soil and we need to make sure that it's safe.
And so this could potentially open up like a can of worms then, right? That we would have to cure.
Technically, yes.
And then,
yeah. You're welcome.
Piggy off that, just do we know, or is it possible to obtain any information of the surrounding areas that have to build, like Las Casitas, to see if there was anything that was, because those are the same, it's literally kitty corner. When they broke ground, if there was anything, just to kind of have an idea if it's like I don't know, kind of like a prereq before we do this dive, because this is a lot of money that perhaps may not, I mean, I know we have to do it, but it's almost like, I guess that's.
It is a lot, and it's included in the budget. These are normal, routine type of services that we need to do when we have construction projects. To answer your question about whether an adjacent property, if we have information, that's outside of our scope.
Okay.
It's outside of the school district. I do not know, and I can find out because I'm curious now as well, if the reports are public documents.
Yeah.
And so we can look into that.
I have a
And-
question. Can I add to that?
Mhm.
Sorry.
No, I'm done.
Okay. Let's say the report comes back, right? They're gonna give us a report, and it's gonna have a detailed, gonna have everything detailed and line item, right? Like here's this. So like when you're buying a house, you do a home inspection. They're gonna want to find every little inch of something that's wrong with your house, but the loan may not require for you to cure 5 of those 10 items. Is that similar to what would come back to us? And then we would see, hey, we have to do cure this, and this before we move to the next phase.
So the next step, we have the report from the Department of, I always say DTSC, the Department of Toxic Substances. And this next report will be provided to them. They may sign off and say, everything's good, there's nothing else you need to do. Or they may come back and say, as part of this project, you need to make sure that you do this, this, that. Whatever they tell us to do, we have to do. As a reminder, this is a normal part of our project, and it is already included in the budget.
And we've done it with every other site
Every
that we-
project, yeah. And even the next item.
I know, I'm
is
just
in
saying,
reference to
yes,
this
I
type
think
of
it's great
work.
to save money for sure, but this project is already, the concern is that the Elkhorn has already been delayed.
Mhm.
And it's an unfortunate part of doing business.
And this does not delay the project. We are
No.
on, yeah, we're on
No,
time.
I understand that. No, I meant if we wait to look into other things, that's what I'm saying.
Oh,
So
yes.
there's a. Okay.
So
Or
our
you- I'm
request is
gonna-
that you approve the contract with UES for $63,380.
Thank you. And I know that we're not a lot of people in this room for sure. But the process would be you can always go and fill out a public comment, but we don't yell out. So, okay. So thank you for that, and thank you for sharing the costs. So if there's not any more questions, then can we have a motion?
Move.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Trustee Wong, seconded by Clerk Castro. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And that takes us to the next action item, which is approval of the amendment number 3 of the Terracon Consulting, Inc. for materials testing services for the ESSER 3 project. Again, with Monique Stovall, our chief.
Thank you. This evening, we're asking for your approval of amendment number 3, also change order number 3 to the Terracon Consulting contract for $66,150. This is unusual. This may be the first time I've come to you since I've been here with a third change order. What's occurring with this particular project is, yes, there's been delays to the project that, as we've shared with you, we've had issues with some of our contractors. And some of our contractors, because of their schedules and a variety of things, has resulted in additional inspections. We're ensuring that any additional inspections that are a result of their schedule or their work, they're paying for those costs. But just like the previous contract, there are some things that are naturally part of a project that would require us to increase our costs because of what they need to inspect. For example, we had to, some of the things that we're having to do is re-excavate footings and conduct re-inspections because we found that the subgrade was a little too soft. And so once we take those back out, then it needs to be inspected when it goes back in. See, and so I wanted to also share that depending, as we talked about a little bit just a moment ago, there's some areas within West Sacramento, agriculture. There's some areas with a different type of soil landscape, which also required different projects or different schools to have a different number of inspections. We're in a situation where I believe we're touching almost every single school, and we typically don't do that. We're usually focusing on one school. And so the variety of the number of inspections, that wasn't something that we would be able to predict because we're touching every school. We didn't know that one school may need 19 inspections and the other school would need only 9 inspections. And so what we're asking is for you to approve the amendment for $66,150 for the additional inspections needed that are a result of changes that are related to things specific to Washington Unified and our West Sacramento community. We are not asking you to approve an amendment for costs that are related to issues dealing with our.
Are there any public comments?
No public comments.
No public.
I know, but the one time I don't ask.
Okay, are there any board comments?
I have a question. So what I'm hearing is we had the contract, we're like doing the testing, go out there, realize something else, now we got to test again. That's why we have the second. Now we're doing a third. Is there a possibility we could see a fourth one?
Great question, because that was the same question I asked the team.
Okay.
I don't like amendments. I really don't. I like us to be able to have an idea of how we're going to end. I don't like amendments for additional time, additional money. Sometimes that's because there's unknowns. So the question I asked the team is, okay, we're going back for third to our board to ask them for, is this all that we need? Based to the best of their ability, the answer is yes. But I cannot say with certainty that something unique may occur. What I can share is that we should be coming to the end of this, and the frustration that you feel is the frustration we feel. And it's the frustration that our facilities director has shared with our contractors to the point to where he meets weekly with the vice president.
The comment. For the record here, and if you have the information, what's the impact if we don't fund this third amendment?
If we don't fund this third amendment, the areas in which the inspections need to be done, we won't be able to continue with. We won't be able to get those projects to completion because they won't pass.
I don't have my notes with me. So can I ask again one more? So we did inspections and then it didn't pass it wasn't, they found more?
Yes. So let me give you a different example. And for me, this is easier to grasp. So this is not this company, but it's in the same type of example. So at our schools, many of our schools received new surfacing for the playground. And we make sure we get the right materials. The soil is good, which is the soil underneath, the soil that we're talking about here. The soil's good. The materials are good. We're using a consistent material at each of the schools. And at one particular school, when the inspector comes out and drops this huge weight onto the surface of the ground, it may not pass inspection. We build it so that we assume that it'll pass inspection, but there may be something different that may have occurred. And so we have to go back, we have to redo that, we have to analyze what it is we need to change. Once we fix it, then the inspector has to come out. So that's the situation where we're in right now. Whenever we build something, yes, we get the report to say this is great, but if something goes wrong with it, just like, when we're building a home, the contractors have an inspector say it's ready to release. If it's not ready to release, fix it, and then the inspector.
So it's like when you're pouring concrete and there's fibers in the concrete, the contractor should have known that concrete wasn't going to pass inspections, because usually there's a certificate that is included with the tags of the concrete that would have been good concrete, right?
It could be that situation, but I am hesitant to say that the contractor should have known. There may have been situations where we did everything or they did everything according to all regulations, but something unusual, an external something may have, or it may have come from the company. It passed our inspections here, but then when we put it in, there was a nuance or something didn't quite work where we purchased it from somebody else that said they passed their inspection. So I can't speak to every single situation, especially, to say definitively what occurred for every school.
But a subcontractor would be under the general contractor.
Yeah.
They would be using their subcontractors, right?
Mhm.
So when they went and bid the project, they would have had a scope that each of them would have had to perform.
Yeah.
And be an expert in, right?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
are there ever, in this case, did we do a pushback back to the contractor? Hey, you knew the scope, you knew the area, you knew the building, you knew the age of the building, the soil, because they should have done an on-site inspection in the very beginning before they bid.
We
They
did.
would have come out and looked
Yeah.
at the area and seen what they were doing. So
Mhm.
my question is, do we ever push back because I'm seeing a lot of change orders. I'm like, oh my gosh, and it's just concerning because everybody's budget conscious. Are we pushing back to the contractors on
Absolutely.
these items?
Absolutely. That's why when they came to us and said, hey, we need to, this is everything that needs to get done. These are all of the inspections that we need. Our facilities director is meeting actually with them weekly to say, where's the project? And he does push back. I can provide you, maybe more details on,
Yeah.
this is
That's what
our
I was gonna say.
portion,
Yeah.
but this was the scope of the cost. I
Will
just
we
don't have
get,
that.
is there a possibility of getting the change order? Because when there's change orders, it'll list what the change
Yes, it
order is,
does.
right? So will we get a copy of those moving forward? Could we? Or is it too much? I don't think it would be too much work, right?
I don't think it's too much, and I don't have it in front of me, but it should have been included in the contract. Because in a contract, we have to list the scope of
Right.
work. I can review that.
But the
and if
change
it's-
order won't be included in the contract because we haven't foreseen that it was coming, right? The actual change order.
well, we have to have I will get back to you. Okay.
Perfect.
I'll get back to you
Yeah.
and make sure that you do receive a copy that has the detailed change order.
Yes,
Would
that's
that be
what I'm
helpful?
asking for. Yeah, and I know you
Okay.
can't give it now, but
Yeah.
it's just for better knowledge for us,
Mhm.
for me at least, and I ask these questions because I look at contracts for construction. So I've seen change orders, I've seen them listed and what actually they're needing the monies for and what happened, and our project manager will take it and do whatever they need to do with it, right? So that's why I'm asking, just for better knowledge for myself. I know it can be done, but
Exactly.
because they're big items. So, and I know it's necessary, but just for my knowledge or our knowledge, be able to make
Absolutely.
the decision.
Sure, we can absolutely get that
Thank
for you.
The fact of the contract, it shows some amendments, but I was trying to. $121. So there are some. That's a good point, and having it very clear to be laid out. Moving.
I mean, I hate to put more work. It just,
No, when
No,
it's
that's
already
fine,
here,
and-
we can just have it
Yeah.
be more visible. I mean, I don't mean, but
Yeah.
the work is done. They know what it. I think
Right,
that's
right,
a
right.
good- Out, because it wasn't.
And we can look at, we can revisit when we do amendments. Maybe we'll put things at the front of the, instead to make it a little bit easier for you to find. You'll also soon be receiving the cover page with few board meetings to help give you additional information.
Right. Well, there's no question. Motion. Thank you. Moved by trustee Hunt, seconded by trustee Wong. All in favor?
Aye.
I too vote aye.
Thank you.
And next, we have the approval of the out-of-state conference for Administrative Professional Conference from September 7th to 10th, 2025 in Seattle, Washington, and that is with our Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services, Audrey Str-
Good evening again. I am before you this evening seeking approval for 6 of our employees to attend an out-of-state conference titled Administrative Professional Conference. It's in September 2025 in Seattle, Washington, and the total financial impact is $16,500, which includes their registration costs, lodging and travel, and it will be paid for using the Classified Professional Learning Fund.
Are there any public comments?
No public comment.
Thank you. Are there any board questions or?
I'm reading this is for our secretary.
Yes.
Is it specific secretaries, like certain sites?
It's district office secretaries.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I think I read this prior and I guys aren't finding it, but said in here that they would bring the information back and share it with others. in the district.
Normally, do we know like how the people that are going to the conferences, how they're picked or assigned?
It varies. You know, if it's certificated or classified, but it's usually open to who's available and who might benefit from this opportunity. So usually we try to make it equitable and offer it to whoever would like to participate.
And then just for transparency, like always question like could we have found something that was in state versus out of state? You know, it's always top of mind.
Yes. This particular vendor, it's a national conference, and so the location changes every year. But we do always seek local opportunities first.
I think those are important considerations as we move forward as well when we think about the budget work and stabilization groups. I also know that when we think about what the PD allotment for CSEA versus our WSCA is that we've spent quite a bit of money on sending our certificated staff to conference as well. And so just making note of that, not that it's a competition or anything, but making note that this is for our certificated staff. We have, our classified. It's already getting a little bit later.
Yes.
So I think our classified stuff.
Yes.
Thank you for correcting.
Okay. It's an equitable investment.
Mhm.
And the note was in the description.
Yes. Yep.
Yes, it was in the agenda description.
Okay, is there a motion?
I move. Second.
Thank you. Moved by Vice President Coffey, second by Trustee Wong. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Vote aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That takes us to board governance. We have the approval of the California School Board Association, CSBA, and Association of California School Administrators ACSA Coast to Coast Federal Advocacy Trip for 4 days. So we noted that this was actually with us prior in Washington, D.C. from Monday, April 28th to Wednesday, April 30th, 2025. Dr. Hope.
Yes, we're bringing this back. One of the requests from our last meeting was if we would be able to have the opportunity to perhaps send 4 trustees instead of 3 trustees. And we have received confirmation that we can move forward with sending 4 trustees.
That's true. We can do
That's
everybody.
5 if that's
people.
what you wish. And so the total for 4 trustees, including registration, airfare, and lodging, would be approximately $9,106.
And we did talk about that this is a unique time that we're facing, and I know some colleagues I've reached out to who are going to this. Their one individual, their full board was going, and then Trustee Wong reached out and spoke as well. There might be some limitations with some of the rooms, but we want
I
to.
mean, there's a standard response, like if you show up, I really.
Yeah. And I think that.
But I asked this whole, are you really talking to a board of directors that way?
No, I was just exhaling because I hurt myself. So
Oh.
sorry, it has nothing to do with you. With the response.
CSBA, I honor staff's
I was like,
but
no.
yes, I mean, essentially, they wouldn't. There's more enough.
What could we do? 5?
So that
I
if,
had understood that there was a calendar conflict. I mean,
Or could we
do
put
one
5
at a
and then she can make some changes to
Yes.
that calendar?
I think we just.
I think the question is
it's up to
if
us.
all, I think the will of the board, based on our last conversation, because this was a very supportive board about this conference and or not conference, but sorry, advocacy, given the timing. That also changed the narrative of Weldon. Let's open it up. And so if every board member wanted to go, I think that's an important. So I know that you expressed interest.
I did, but I appreciate just the authorization. If you
Mhm.
don't go, then you
Yeah,
don't
I
use.
guess-
Like I can appreciate the desire for 5.
Yeah, I'd like a motion to move or amend that so we can have 5 if possible. If
Whatever,
unable,
that's-
then we can make that change if necessary.
Can I ask a question about amending? We already approved 3 last meeting, so I'm wondering if on process instead we should amend this to approve 2.
2 more.
So that it is the full board. Because we're not really, we've already passed that we were sending through based on.
I'm just thinking about budget, and even I'm gonna hold myself accountable. I think about, it, trying to save every little dime that we have. And I mean, even if I do want to go, like I really do, I would really love to gain more knowledge by art,
I
to
would say that
advocate
I would-
personal.
I think the adventure of hearing your, like that, the option would
Yeah.
actually, I don't know if I think beyond that, it's not just about learning, it's about hearing your voice as an advocate in this community for a long time with multiple perspectives. I would flip that a little bit because it is about us sharing our story and why the funding cuts, the funding freeze are important. And I understand that there are, other calendaring issues. So
If it was, 2 years ago, I would agree with that sentiment, and I would say I would step back, and that's
Yeah,
why
I would
initially
too.
I
That's why I'm
said,
like, I would step back.
since Clerk Coffee hadn't attended, and,
Right.
but I think given the times that we're in and the work that we did to talk about that does change the dynamic. Also, I'll say a couple things for cost savings. One, some of us have gone through the Masters of Governance, so take that off. We are no longer doing that in terms of the budget. Is not needed for all of our board members. Although we try to budget so everybody can do that if they need to. And then secondly, CSBA next year will be in Sacramento, so we have no hotel or airfare costs.
Yes.
So I'll just add that piece to it. Thirdly, Nicole Anderson, who we've been working with, we'd already budgeted for that and paid for that work. So just as we think about cost savings, I just wanted you to know that those are pieces that are cost savings that would help us.
And in part, not necessarily this trip, because a board of directors, they do, I get covered costs.
Oh,
for that. Or between hotels, so that.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, that makes me feel a little bit, because here I am asking all these questions about the change orders, and then I'm like,
No, it's important to ask.
I agree with you, Vanessa.
It is important to be prudent and
So-
to ask.
But no pressure. I think DC would value every.
I like the way to approach it, though, if we approve for the 5, and then we can figure out who can, at least the option.
Do that. But I would say, can we amend to 2?
That's what it says. We amend to add to, and so I would like to amend. Wait, am I motioning? Motion to amend approval of those California School Board Association, CSBA, and Association of California School Administrators, ACSA, Coast to Coast Federal Advocacy Trip for 2 additional trustees in Washington. Blah, 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 blah.
There's a second. Motion made by President Coffee, seconded by Clerk Castro. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Thank you. Oh, and now we need to vote for the
That was just
official approval. We have in the past, did ask Marie, we have sometimes made an amendment. That's why I wanted to go back and look at our process.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and motion
yes,
to.
It's
go
fine.
ahead.
Safest is 2 motions.
It
Second.
is. Will hurt nothing. You are correct. Vice President Coffee made the motion. Clerk Castro seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
I do. Thank you all. I have a recommendation because it is 9:30 and we still need to go back into closed session, 2 items. And I think that there's probably some feedback on the handbook. So my question would be possibly, maybe on process, either we move this to next meeting or in the interim, we can see if, check with legal counsel, if we can have the trustees who have feedback, they saw that, is that, share that, and that can go back to the handbook committee, back to us, if we can see which one is better. Is it better to put it on our next meeting, or is everyone okay with that?
I mean, if legal counsel's okay with us doing one way, I don't know, however they want to.
Yeah, give it to Dr.
And then you guys
Let's
look at
wait
it
and
again.
see, and then you could give it to Dr. Hildreth, and then she can share it with us to go through that feedback. Some of it, I think, what is semantic, like the word choice was wrong, or the this piece. So some of them are very simple fixes that don't even require it, policy, but others. And some things were added from our. So we'll see which one is that one. But the next one, item 3, is only a page. So I think that we.
And it's super clear. And, Vice President Coffee and I did our due diligence.
So I'll formally read it. It's our
So-
first read and adoption of Board Policy and Administrative Regulations number 1312.1, complaints concerning district employees, and that is Jay Borges, our superintendent.
Guys. Good evening, trustees. Is everybody else yawning yet? I am bringing forward an update on Board Policy 1312.1, complaints concerning district employees. Attached to tonight's agenda, you can see the board policy as well as the AR. While the board only has to vote on the board policy, I thought it was important that you saw the whole thing. These recommendations were done in 3 parts. First, starting with our consultant with our CSBA, and then it was taken twice to our board policy subcommittee for review and feedback prior to bringing here. You can see on the colors, red means what's been taken out. Green is what's been added, and there's actually a little area of blue. That just was additional edits, and they changed to a different color. So I just wanted to call out what the blue language, just so they have there. It's talking about not investigating complaints that are anonymous. We find that that's really important because we want to really protect our employees to make sure that things aren't just coming in willy-nilly, right? We want to be able to have the opportunity to really understand what conduct might be a concern to someone, but we also make the stipulation that if there's something that we need to investigate, we will look into it, not necessarily in alignment with that individual who made the anonymous complaint, because we have an obligation to make sure our students and staff are safe. And then we did just accompany the AR simply because I wanted to show the detail that went into that. The AR is always the how we're doing something and really focuses on resolving complaints informally. That also protects our employees from misunderstanding, miscommunication that sometimes occurs. And then if we need to go to the formal process, we will, it outlines that whole process so everybody understands what transpires. So I am asking the Board of Trustees to approve the update to the board policy.
No, I mean, it was pretty straightforward. We had a really short and brief, thank you for a thorough explanation. And what time did we end? Yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward, and we agree with the anonymous. It does Yeah. I don't know. We support these amendments.
Yes.
But I
You
don't
wanna
know if
make
you
a
guys have
motion?
any- Yeah. Go
You want
ahead.
to move?
I'll move.
I move.
Moved
I'll
by
second.
Vice President Coffee, seconded by Trustee Wong. All in favor?
Aye.
We just didn't know if our colleagues, you all had any questions.
Well, yeah.
I mean, that,
You
that
just
part.
Made it. This
That
one was
part.
clear.
Okay, that, I mean, that part. I mean, we
Thank you.
were just waiting.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay,
we
so that
are.
takes us to the board and superintendent comments. Dr. Hill.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you all this evening.
It's good to see you too.
I know, it's the first time. We started talking soil and they all left.
Yes. But I really want to, as we saw last meeting and we continue to see, that empowerment is once again on display. And when we created the strategic plan 3 years ago, that was a new model for us, the equity, excellence, and empowerment. And the empowerment was about making sure that our staff, our students, our families knew that we were listening, that we wanted them to come and say what they needed to say, and we were open to listening. And so it brings me joy that people are all are taking the opportunity to share, and they feel empowered even when that's not easy to hear what they're talking about. And so we saw our staff, we saw our students tonight. We know the courage it takes to come up here and say your experience, knowing that your experience for many are hard to hear, and that's not the intent of anyone to want our students to feel that their school is not a safe place in all aspects. But they did that, and I'm just appreciative that they're willing to do that. And I want our school community to believe what we all know, that safety is a priority for us, and that we have to make sure that our students and staff feel safe on every campus, and recognize that our safety is our physical safety and our emotional safety. So I think we heard both talking about that physical safety, and also in hearing the results of our survey data. That's a lot is also the emotional safety. And so that just highlights for me, and what the board has asked for is the importance of the use of data to assist us in the decisions and the investments that we make, that we are committed to continuing to use data to see what's working, what we need to improve on. And for me as a educator, teacher, parent, it starts with, what did the student say? Because I'm going to come in with my lens as an adult. I'm going to come in with my life experience as an adult. But if I don't pause and say, what's your experience as a child, even in 3rd grade, as an 8-year-old, I'm going to miss an opportunity to provide you in support in the way you need to receive. And so I think that's the importance of continuing to use surveys as just one way to hear the voices of the over 7,000 students that we serve. And so this was just a way for us to now say, how do we do something with this data? And I think that's what my takeaway was. We're here, we're advocating, we're telling you what we need, and they're looking to us for action. And that is my commitment with the board of what does action look like, so that we can show a sense of urgency and some immediate change that our students need to continue to be college and career ready. So just really, really appreciative people coming to us and sharing their truth, because that really is what that was. So thank you for that. I want to continue and just ask everyone to join us on March 1st for our Green Schoolyard celebration, which is open to the entire community. It's an event that showcases our commitment to creating sustainable and environmentally friendly learning spaces for our students at 4 of our schools: Westmore Oaks, Riverbank, Yolo High School, and River City. And this transformation is made possible by a generous $21 million grant from CAL FIRE and the expertise of the Texas Trees Foundation School Pools Yolo County program. And the event will take place this coming Saturday, March 1st, from noon to 3 at Riverbank. And so what will happen at the event is our community will be able to view the new nature-based playground and learning area designs, have some free food, some fun nature activities and games, and just a time for community. And so construction of these new outdoor spaces will begin this summer. So it's just that launch of what's to come. We also want to highlight playground improvements for Stonegate, because we know that's been a long time coming. They have access to their new shade structure and rubber play surface, and it was a use of our ESSER funds. So wanted to highlight that. I know that the community was waiting for that for a while. Speaking of professional learning at every level, so we have our trustees attending opportunities. We know certificated and classified have opportunities, but what's unique is that twice a year we have a professional learning day for all of our employees, certificated and classified, and that's coming up on March 7th from 8 to 2, and it's a day that allows time for continuous improvement, reflection, workshops, practices, training that's specific to the classification of the job that each of our employees have. They'll be facilitated by our own people who are going to lead these workshops, so always thinking about how to save. So at times we bring in experts to come, and then times we have trained our own resident experts, so they will be facilitating. And so our K-8 for certificated, our K-8 math teachers are going to be focusing on developing and refining our common formative assessments and aligning our instruction with pacing guide. Our PE and VAPA teachers will receive training on visual routines and procedures to enhance classroom management and student engagement. Our special education educators will engage in math planning and support with a focus on K-5 math pacing alignment. Our high school teachers will participate in professional learning centered on social emotional learning to better support student well-being and academic success. And then our classified staff will have sessions such as building inclusive learning environments that will help foster supportive classrooms and school settings. Various departments will lead specific on-the-job training sessions tailored to their roles and responsibilities. And then additionally, all departments will have some dedicated time to complete their required Keenan training as part of the schedule. So really excited about this professional learning opportunity. And I do want to add a thank you to all of our parents who are keeping their children home. That's not a student school day, to allow our staff this investment time. And we know that that is a big ask for our parents. So our staff coming with strong attendance is showing our parents that we appreciate their doing whatever they needed to do to keep their children at home, to allow our staff to have this dedicated time. And then just ending in that professional learning, just a reminder with all that we're hearing from especially our students and our teachers and our classified staff being so willing and asking for training and support. We are 100% ready to provide the skill. What we have to make sure we have the same level of commitment is for the will. So I can give you all the skill, but do we have the collective will to implement the skills that we're being asked to provide? So that's just a rhetorical, just something for us to all think about in whatever kind of trainings we do, knowing that our advocacy for our students has always been top of mind, and we're beginning to see that even more. And so lastly, just speaking of our students, there was a Student Voices conference, and we had 71 students from grades 8 through 12 representing 9 of our schools. It was with Impact SAC earlier this month, and they had meaningful discussions, shared their perspective on critical issues affecting the community. We want to thank Yolo County Office of Ed, the district, and West SAC PD, who were among those community organizations present at this Student Voices Conference. And our students, as usual, represented themselves and our district with distinction. They engaged thoughtfully in discussions and demonstrated their ability to articulate their views on complex issues that affect their lives and their community. And we appreciate that. And knowing, as we've shared since the beginning of 2025, we're keeping abreast of everything that's happening that's impacting our district and our community. And so we are working on an event that will be held at Westfield Village. It will be an immigration workshop. And the goal will be to partner with either SAC Act or NorCal Resist to empower our community with resources and knowledge. And the workshop will cover crucial topics such as know your rights, information helping families understand their rights when interacting with law enforcement or immigration officials. There will be available resources for immigrant families, including legal assistance and community support. And there will be updates on current immigration policies and how they may affect our community. And so our goal is, by providing this workshop, that we are ensuring our parents have access to information and tools that they need to navigate the complex, ever-changing landscape of immigration in our nation. So please stay tuned for an official date when we will be having that work. So we will encourage all of our interested families to attend, because we know that together we can build a stronger, more informed community that supports the success of all students. And with that,
Thank you. Trustee Wong.
Thank you. We have 10 minutes, and I know we're going to go past it, so I'll be quick. Really great facilities meeting with Vice President Coffey. So we went through the Elkhorn and had really direct conversations that was brought up, and so I think they were fruitful, and kind of looking forward to the next step of. We just had a really practical we could do to make an investment in Elkhorn that makes sense over decades versus like. So I know Vice. As I was Vanna going like, let me understand this. So moving things around. And the Cool Schools update was really cool. And looking forward to attending that after our board governance and training on Saturdays. They have, pop over there and they're looking. You saw some of the work on the policy subcommittee as well. And so we did start to unpack the tobacco-free policies as well as a few others, and it just I'm glad you guys went through CSBA, because I looked at that thing up going, well, Kobe and I looked at this, why isn't it hasn't been updated since 2012? I was elected after 2012. So that is actually a little bit interesting experience, if you will, of having done what y'all did and going, where did my work go? But like appreciate that with new fresh eyes and smarter and more thoughtful process. Not that we weren't tough. It is being updated yet again, because I think it is good. I also wanted to, I talked to Dr. Hildreth about this because even though I know that we're waiting on some surveys that were sent out this week, the rise in vaping and drug claims is of concern to we used to actually have dogs to come, and that's a cost-effective way. Kids who may have, I think, I want to call them. I remember that when we were on the board, like maybe that's something we might want to consider in the absence of whatever surveys, what are the survey in the again, just as defense safety measure to say, hey, like if you find this on a student, then that can be a very just strategic, and again, unannounced. You'd have dogs walking the hall. I'm seeing like folks who have been to the high school remember that happened.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, yeah. Anyways, that's something I'm just going to put that out there. I shared it with because a lot of schools do that because across it's just a rise and region. I was able to attend Yolo County's League of Women Voters luncheon today, where Lucas Breakus, supervisor, gave us an update, and it's not great. And I think I raised this before, is that really in the health and human services world, kind of Medi-Cal, Medicaid, mental health, support services for children and child welfare, all of those funding freezes have put our communities, kids. So just being mindful of what's happening is important. And in the next county 2x2 is, but I think it's probably good to have an update on those potential impacts. And I had not realized our Health and Human Services Director, Nolan, who Vice President Coffey had last time, is no longer with. Yep. And so they're going through some changes there. So that's a very recent announcement. So just a lot of questions about our partnership with the county and the supports we were trying to put in for our kids. Just again, they're not all through because they're going through changes. Effect. A couple of other things. Just I know we talk about a lot of negative. Really, really, really proud of the UCD English Language Learner Fellows who are nervous to reach out to me to be invited to really see. You know, as an English language learner, you're always thinking and to be able to be up there and say this is what we did, be part of a Yolo County cohort that is actually kind of trying to make some change and get really proud of Bahar and the River students who have questions. So when to hear their findings, I thought they were pretty interesting findings increase English language learners. Next Wednesday is Read Across America. Yay! Have my time slot. I don't have a Dr. Seuss outfit, but we'll see. We'll figure that out. Next Wednesday is also Empower Her, where our middle school kids go to UC Davis for a women's empowerment meeting, and I know that again, Vice President Coffey's daughter enjoyed it last. So really excited. Please do. It's all day. It's from 9 to 2. So it's all the other, whole female trustees there with our students. After you do Read Across America, so I'm trying to do all the things. And last but not least, 4 of our River City high school students were invited to the Department of Education by Superintendent of Public Instruction Tony Thurman Wood. And I happened to have a relationship with SSBI and said, hey, look at what happened. Like, they asked really, really thoughtful questions. And I gave them a shout out because they were so poised and articulate about the need. So a lot of kind of juxtaposed to a lot of things, challenging things that are happening on a high school campus. A lot of really positive are happening with our students. A lot of that too. That's it for me.
Thank you. Trustee Hunt.
Thank you. Well, I do have my Read Across America Dr. Seuss hat, but my daughter said, please don't wear that to my classroom or anybody else's classroom, but we'll see about that. Yeah, exactly. Over the past couple of weeks-ish, I had the opportunity to visit some additional sites with either school site visits or attending some of the principal coffees. And first, I wanted to thank the parent liaisons. I wasn't aware that that was a support that we had in the district. And it was really amazing to see that they were available not only to translate for families, but to be a support system for our diverse community. So thank you for what you do. I know it's not easy to sit there and try to translate an entire meeting real time and provide the support that they do. We've heard a lot of feedback visiting sites over the past month-ish, and I again just want to acknowledge that we are listening and we are hearing all of the needs, and listening to the feedback and are able to see the need ourselves as we're physically there. Okay, so back in December, we saw the preliminary timeline for the SRO survey implementation, and I know we're working on a survey that's going out to families very soon. On that initial timeline, we were hoping for a January, early February distribution of that survey. So just the ask to try to catch up on that timeline and not delay it any further, where if we're a month behind, let's not push everything else a month out, but try to catch up at this point. And it would also be good to see, and I think we talked about this a little bit before, but some sort of communication plan or timeline. I could be wrong, but I don't think as a parent or community member I've seen, anything come out on what the plans are for this program. Or just that it's a potential program coming soon. So I just want to make sure that we're keeping this topic active and moving as quickly as we can. So regarding, the River City High School, I had initially wanted to just talk about the hate speech challenges, but regarding that, it's great to see that we're getting a working group together who's, coming up with a plan how we can implement a change in the classroom potentially. That's great. And I think we also need to look at a more urgent action, something we can do now, and not just at River City and not just for the students, but for our families across the district. Specifically for the high school, get the student body together and hear from a site leadership position. This type of behavior is not tolerated here, and there will be consequences if we see the behavior, and follow through with those consequences, because we're hearing that, at least the interpretation is that that's not always the case. And maybe spread that message across the district as well. We're hearing some similar concerns at our middle schools or K-8s as well. It's not just an issue at the high school. They're just the ones bringing it and being vocal about it. So if, we can think about what can we do right now. And that kind of, I don't know if it's time or how we typically approach this type of thing, but are we at a point where it's time for the board to have, in a special session or something, a conversation specifically about these challenges, and what can we push from our seat to, make sure we can implement something, see the change, hear from staff. I'm not sure what that looks like, but personally, I'm feeling like we might be there. It's not stopping. And I agree with what Dr. Hildreth said. It's great that we see the community and students specifically feeling empowered to come and share their voice or their presence. Presence is huge to see that. And again, we saw you all, and it does make a big impact. So thank you for coming and being brave enough to be here.
Trustee Hunt, I'm sorry to cut you off,
Oh,
but I'm
yep.
going to real quick make a motion to go past 10 o'clock.
I motioned. It was seconded over here. And all in favor? Aye.
Yes.
I moved.
I thought you said motion. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, is that what you were saying? You were trying to?
She was making the motion.
You said I want a motion.
Oh, like me, I'm motioning.
Oh, okay, my bad. I apologize.
Okay.
I decided, okay. Anyways,
So
now
we're
I
still
really
moving.
threw you off. I apologize.
No.
So, I was trying to
We're
be
all
sly.
good here.
Didn't work.
Just for transparency, so for awareness for everyone here, I did ask Dr. Hildreth for a briefing on the special education program in the district. I don't know if it's something, you know, that we all want to hear being new. I would just like to learn and understand what programs are being offered, what we're doing for our families, and, you know, just seeking to understand before anything else. We heard from our student board member today, and she had some invaluable feedback. All of our student board members went to CSBA with us and took, you know, received training, and they came out of that really excited. And again, not sure the avenue to do this, but I'd like to consider giving our student board members more of a voice. What does that look like, whether it's a voice on campus, interacting with students and bringing that feedback here, or we've seen the last couple board meetings, you know, they are feeling more comfortable to have a voice here. But these are student leaders who can make a big impact, and I think we should take advantage of that, you know, and they're willing and they're excited, and they have a perspective that we no longer have, right? So just wanted to throw that out there, and maybe we talk about what that looks like. That's it. Thank you.
I'm going to keep it brief because I'm tired of hearing my own voice speak. But I want to add because Trustee Hunt and I picked a very peculiar time to want to be a trustee. But yeah, I very important. But man, we're up against some challenges. I do an opportunities to make a very meaningful impact to our students and families. But so I agree with everything that she said because I'm new and I'm in the same position as her where I would like a brief on special education and especially since they're, I don't want to say underfunded, but they don't have a lot of funding, I feel like, and there are a lot of struggles, and it takes a very special person to take that role, just like any other educator, but they have really hard challenges. So I would like to brief as well. And then I like the idea of the dogs. My nephew graduated in 2020, and we had dogs coming on campus and around the walking around like it was. I don't know if it was a surprise because I really don't remember. Yeah, it wasn't planned. So he's like, "Oh, there's dogs." And I'm like, "Good. Maybe they're gonna find." You know, not good, but you know, it's as a safety measure. So maybe we could. You know, what does that look like? And then what else? Oh, yeah, I'll be doing coffee with the principal too and visiting sites. I'm getting prepared for that, and I know I'm a little late on it, but I'm also looking forward to going to the cool school presentation or planting, or you know, just to get involved with that. And I'm done with my comment.
Thank you.
All right, I got a lot. At least I think I do. So one, can I get a status on the girls wrestling, the pendant? I kind of want to know what's going on, where we're at. Do we get it? Do we have to, you know, steal the flag, capture the flag? I don't know how that works, but not steal the flag, you know, the game. So want to know about that. That has been on my mind. The esports that happened at Elkhorn, I was there. That was so much fun. There was only one girl, Zoe, and she was from one of the schools from the South, but she was there holding her own. I will say that much. And all of these screens, big old screens, and there were Mario Brothers, Smash Brothers. They were all going at it, And then it got down to the last two, and it's like, okay, who's gonna win? And the names that they gave themselves, just I laughed because I'm like, I know it sounds like a Gen Z or whatever that next millennium Alpha. I know Alpha's late, Gen Z's. So it's just so funny to see them in their element. It is esports is a, how do I say it? It is an actual sport, and kids can get scholarships off of this. Like, if you did not know that, parents, be pushing them towards your games. You're like, because I remember hearing when I was growing up, that's not gonna get you anywhere in life. No, you got YouTubers who all they do is play, and people watch, and they're like, yeah, now I know where I'm going. Like, goals, just saying. So that was a lot of fun. Kudos to at least for Riverbank, Mr. Wong. They won Mr. Wong. Yes, he won the it's a belt. No relation. Yeah, but no, he's from Riverbank. Yes, and now they won last year, and now Riverbank are now the new winners, and they have the title and the belt. So kudos to them. Looking excited for Riverbank planting the trees this Saturday. Thank you, Dr. H, for reminding everybody. We did have a facilities subcommittee meeting. We talked about Elkhorn. Yes, you were Arvana White going over and like, what about here and here? We really took the information that was said to us during the general school board meeting. And I really want to highlight that because as Trustee Hunt said, your presence, students, your voice, community, we hear it, and we're trying to do our best to ensure that we advocate for you as much as we can. So we really try to, in that meeting, go back and look at things. What could we do? What was possible? And just try to do our best with the limitations that we had to make things a little bit more, I don't even know, not more better, that's not the right, thank you, more functional for the site. So yeah, so there was that. And then we also following after had our policy committee where we talked about all the wonderful things like we did today. So more to come from that for sure. If you did not know, this Friday, YOLO is having their championship handball tournament. And so 12 o'clock, it starts, so tomorrow, Friday, because today's Thursday. And then, so that is what's going on. There is a lot of things that are happening at YOLO, a lot of safety and wellness concerns. There have been individuals who have asked me to share that we do, not we, but YOLO, these are their words, that we do need, definitely need some change there. They need another CSM. They have 7 different programs on that site, 2 different social workers, 1 day a week. They do have people that we pay, to come in and have pep talks and workshops with our students, but it's not working. What we do need, instead of random individuals who are coming in and having these talks, is we need somebody who is stationary, someone who is there. So also, I was provided with some recommendations. One, possibly moving all of the programs to one side of the campus so that way they're not all throughout, and having YOLO feel more like a high school instead of a program amongst other programs. In addition, adding another full-time CSM and also adding a full-time social worker, because 2 different social workers 1 day a week is not enough for some of our most vulnerable students, high school students. So that was something that I was asked to bring to the board. So in addition, some of the things that are positive that I know are happening at Riverbank, I don't know if you guys know that there's this program, speaking of programs at other sites, but there's this one at Riverbank. It's called Improve Your Tomorrow, IYT. And my little guy is a part of it. as well as he is a part of Avid. I can't tell you guys how much I am so proud of this young man. And I say that because if you knew where he started so many years ago and see where he's at now, he came home yesterday and was like, you need to check out my grades in Aries. And I'm all, what's going on in Aries? So I get on and I look at it and I can't access anything. It says, can't do it. I don't know what happened. For whatever, it's only him. I can do it for my high schooler, can't do it. I said, what's going on, Mr. Julius? And he goes, what, you can't see it? Okay, can you talk to my teacher and see if he could take a screenshot of my grades, because it's really important that you see them. I'm like, all right, okay. So I reached out to his Avid teacher. What's going on? Can you do this for me? Like, sure, got you. And then he sends it to me. A+, all of them. I'm like, okay, what's happening here? He goes, IYT has been helping me, and I'm also doing this, and I'm doing this, and I'm making sure I do this. And I'm like, wow, and Avid's helping. And he's like, yep. And this kid, he is now has a goal, like he's determined. He is determined to be better than his brother and sister, like so competitive, like he is on that roll. So he went to UC Santa Cruz with his IYT brothers, and he's one of the youngest ones. And he is actually really excited because he sees that there's more options for college opportunities. I know that this Tuesday, Avid at Riverbank is going to Sac State, and I will be attending. Actually got approved time off. I'm like, wow, I'm on probation, almost done. So I'm excited to do that with my children, who are both my 6th and my 8th grader are in Avid. So then, hearing Mr. Colligan, he's actually my son's AP statistics teacher, and I hear what the students are saying when they talk about a teacher who's listening, who is trying to connect. My son was originally in statistics and decided on the first day, he was like, you know what, I'm gonna try AP stat. So the teacher, Mr. Colligan, went up to him and said, are you sure? Like, he wanted to make sure you're not just doing this just because, like, you know this is gonna be more rigorous, it's gonna be this, it's gonna be that. He took the time to really get to know why my son, like why he was in. And he's like, yeah, I do statistics all the time with my, I'm really into NASCAR and this and this and this. I look at this and this with my mom, football, analytics, yada, yada, yada. He's like, okay, we got this. Well, he's in this class, and we actually, my son and I will have sit down conversations about statistics and like his homework. I do not touch his homework. We only talk about like, well, what does this mean? And looking at like data graphs and charts, and well, what do you think, and why do you think this is, and possible outcomes of what they could mean. And it's almost like an adult conversation, and I'm not knowing if I'm ready for this, but it's happening. And I know he's learning a lot in that class. Statistics has been is one of my favorites. So I was like, come to me, my child. But anyway, I don't know what it is. I mean, I do know, but I also don't know specifics. When we do our exit interview, please, let's find out. Maybe even ask if there's a possibility that could this change, or is it an indefinite, it's not happening, I'm out. Students definitely spoke, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you. There is in our region an SRO who has a corgi. I don't know if that is the same level of the dogs we're talking about or what their corgi does. But I do think there are opportunities to be had in terms of also when we talked with the police department about what services they can offer versus, and then third party, we had third party vendors before. And so I think that's a good conversation to have to better understand. I appreciate the updated, and that makes a lot of sense now. Trustee Wong, when I pulled up the anti-tobacco policy, you're right, it was not the policy that we had approved that had been updated. It was much older. But I'm glad that that will be updated now, as it needs to be. I had a great week last week, but a busy week too. I did meet Mr. Colligan. I met with many teachers, and I also had the good fortune of meeting at every one of our school sites too, with our principals and talking about the work. And I say a good visit, but obviously there were some hard conversations when we heard what we did tonight. But they were all, I really value the conversations that were had about how we can use that information to move better and to do better. There were also a lot of really special, when you're walking around and going into classrooms with the principal and kids saying, oh, principal so-and-so, and they're giving high fives and hugs. I mean, we have a lot of connections on our campuses, and I saw that with our classified staff and our kids. I saw that with our teachers and our kids, and I saw it with our admin and our kids. So there are a lot of really special things happening as well that are important to celebrate in this work. I'm still processing because that was a lot of conversations I had, and I have a whole notebook full of notes. Still processing, even though every school is very unique and all has very unique needs. There are certainly common themes throughout. And I appreciate that you had the facility piece with Elkhorn, because that did come up as well in terms of the facility needs and concerns about what the project is like now for families. And so with that, I think I will forego any additional comments because it's getting late, but I really appreciate all that my colleagues had to say up here as well. And Dr. Hildreth, thank you. And yes, action, I think, needs to come with immediacy on some of the pieces, especially in terms of the hate speech and what is happening, and getting really to our families. And we can do some of that work here with broad. So I look forward to that, and we will all be together again, well, in closed session in a moment, but then also on Saturday in our board governance, and how we can weave some of those conversations in then as well. Okay, so with that, then I'm going to move down to future board agenda items. Trustee Wong, did you want to? Perfect. And will you share the contact information with you? Perfect. And then so let's wait, and Dr. Hildreth will talk this with our legal counsel and then let us know if we can gather those thoughts. And then Trustee Hunt and I can go through, and then some of the things we had talked about too had changed. We spent a lot of time, and Trustee Hunt had a lot of good points on that handbook, but then some things also too. And so we want your input. Okay. So wait to see if you're going to give it to Dr. Hildreth or if we're going to just do it in the board governance.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And then an update I heard on special education for that. What about an executive summary and then maybe a possible meeting with two trustees, or what do you think? Yeah.
No, I don't need it at the board. Do you guys need like a 2x2? Like, do you two want to have?
And I think an assistant superintendent street kind of committee. Oh, what about in it?
Yeah, I think starting with an executive summer would be good. And I think I would like the opportunity to be in a setting to have, yeah, and not necessarily, we don't necessarily need to do it in open session if we think it's better to do that somewhere else.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, are there any others? I would just like, and I don't think it needs to be in a public piece either, especially as we think about protecting our students and the climates that we're in, that there's some things that maybe we don't always announce publicly, but I would like to connect Dr. Hildreth on anything that our GSAs may be doing around the Trans Day of Visibility and anything our school board can do in support. And so if we can maybe talk about that. Okay, then with that, we're going to go back into closed